A bit of a frustrating day for journalists, I'll tell you why.
I will commit in my time in office to get the number of young people who are not in education, employment or training down.
Right, he's turning into our very own Mr. Ben now. He keeps popping up as different occupations, this time selling us apprenticeships. Good news, if you're on benefits, you're going to get more of taxpayers' money if your kids sign up to one of these courses. Is that a good idea? Also,
we've got family here who's expecting us to be here, so we were quite worried the flight was going to get cancelled, so we just didn't know what was happening.
So very British, keeping calm and carrying on. Fires continue to rage in the southwest of France. Our reporter Will Godley has been speaking to Brits still there as cities are evacuated. We're going to hear the latest report on that also this evening.
First of all, you're saying you take responsibility for it and it was a mistake, and yet you won't apologise because you're blaming Nigel Farage for amplifying it.
I think we also need to talk about a double standard.
No, you keep taking the conversation on.
I know how she feels. I had a similar conversation on this show last night. Breaking news, Green Party leader Zach Polansky has responded to the widespread criticism after sharing a social media post which seemed to call for Nigel Farage to be beheaded by a guillotine. I'm going to discuss the rights and wrongs of this with my panel. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Going to tell you why there have been 600,000 mosquitoes released into Washington DC, and that squeaky sound was Eric Ham taking to his seat here, running in last minute. Eric, are you damp? I want to know, just so you are aware. The heavens have opened in the last half an hour here in Washington DC. There's been a severe weather warning. Did you get caught in the rain?
I did.
Oh, well, don't worry, we'll forgive you. Matthew Hurt is also here with me this evening. Great to see you, Matthew. You got here early, avoided the rain.
I did, yes. Absolutely.
Well done, well done. And in London this evening, we have got Paul Cox. There he is, and the wonderful Benjamin Butterworth has joined us as well this evening. Thank you both. So good to see you. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Now, moving on. Waving to them down the lens. There we go, a little friendly wave. Right, moving on to our main news this evening. Now, before they attended Senator Lindsey Graham's memorial service, leaders Volodymyr Zelensky and Benjamin Netanyahu held separate meetings with President Trump behind closed doors. The White House has described the meetings as productive. Images have been released, which you're seeing now, but journalists were unable to confirm, and we still are unable to confirm, the positive nature of these talks. We just weren't let in today. Now, despite our best efforts, the world's press were kept away from the inside of the White House today. You can see some of the pictures there. I was there from about 9 o'clock this morning, so were most people. And it strikes you on a day like this how unusual it is, because the press is given so much access to the White House. All we could manage was a little glimpse, we're seeing it here, of Zelensky arrive at the side door and leave, and then Benjamin Netanyahu just minutes later actually also arriving from the same entrance, having a conversation and leaving. Now we know that Zelensky and Netanyahu also gave exclusive interviews inside that building to the Fox American network here. But very unusual for the press not to be allowed in at all. And I don't know, I'm interested to know from my panel why you think that might be. There was Zelensky just leaving. Neither of them were in the building for particularly long, maybe 45 minutes each or something like that. Matthew Hurt, this is such unusual behaviour by President Trump. Why wasn't he more transparent about what was going on in there today?
You know, I can't speak to the situation inside the White House, but I can say that President Trump and this administration have allowed unfettered access to the press, to both domestic and the foreign, in this case GBNews press. You've had a great interview with him in the past. I do think that he's willing to answer questions in front of the camera and to reporters. This is a situation, though, obviously a little bit more serious in nature, with both Zelensky and Netanyahu in the White House, and I suspect he gave a nod to the domestic press here at Fox News, the US-based press, to have that conversation.
Yeah, but and they weren't official visits, so it wasn't like when Zelensky has been invited into the Oval Office before. We remember in February last year they had that hideous argument. I mean, I personally quite enjoyed it, where they accused Zelensky of being ungrateful for all of the money that they'd given him from America. And then he was welcomed back in August last year. So it's been nearly 12 months since Zelensky's been there. The press weren't allowed in there today, Eric, and we had very anodyne statements. Caroline Levitt said something along the lines of very positive and productive meetings. Very pared back, the kind of comms we don't normally see from the White House. Why do you think that was today?
I think it speaks to the severity of what we're seeing play out right now, particularly in the Middle East. And the fact that we now know that the Ukrainians actually attacked an Iranian ship in the Caspian Sea, there is the possibility of them being drawn into this war, given that the Iranian foreign minister has said that there will be retaliation. And the fact that we know that Ukraine is the only nation that is actually supplying military aid to the United States in the form of drones. I think what you're seeing here right now is President Donald Trump, I think, is probably gathering information to determine what his next move is, particularly given the fact that we now know that Iran has also fired missiles at the United States. So,
yeah, and arguably maybe no good news for America on these particular stories. So, and that we know that they play out with difficulty in terms of the domestic audience here. His foreign policy interventions don't go down well, particularly with some of those in his MAGA base. Let's talk now to a socialist commentator, Samuel Sweek, and author and terror expert, Dr. Carol Lieberman. Thank you both so much for joining us. Samuel, let me come to you now. What's your feeling, your sense when you see President Trump welcoming Benjamin Netanyahu, particularly into the White House today?
Well, thank you for having me. But let's be clear from the get-go here that collectively Trump and Netanyahu are responsible for death and destabilization in the Middle East and the wider world in recent years and in recent months since Trump launched the war in Iran. And it's no surprise to me that the press have been excluded from those from any sort of conversations or been allowed to ask any sort of questions, because what we're seeing is Netanyahu increasingly unstable in his position within Israel, with elections coming up, and obviously Trump very soon facing the midterms. An unpopular war, which he started in Iran, looming over him, and an increasingly impatient public in the United States. Bear in mind that the United States has sent about $16 billion of military aid to Israel, whilst the minimum wage in the United States languishes at about $7.25 since 2009. People are struggling in the United States and around the world as a consequence of this. There's been a lack of transparency in those conversations, and I think a lot of that is because of the thin-skinned nature and unpopularity of these wars.
Dr. Lieberman, do you agree with that assessment? An unpopular war with an impatient public?
I couldn't disagree more with what your guest said. First of all, the reason why the press wasn't allowed in, there were practical reasons and then also additional reasons. The practical reasons were that this was the funeral for Lindsey Graham, first in the Capitol building, his casket laying in wait, and then in the church. And so that took up the most of the day. So he only had a very short time to speak with each of these men, and each of these men weren't there by coincidence. Zelensky, they both had connections to Lindsey Graham, and both of them were very appreciative of Lindsey Graham and Israel and Ukraine, and then Trump. Also, this wasn't exactly an easy day for him. Trump was very good friends with Lindsey Graham, and in fact, he was one of the last, if not the last, person to speak with him before Lindsey died, that night. So this is an incredibly difficult day for him. I think if you saw, I watched the lying in state and the funeral, and clearly Trump was very moved, very sad about this whole thing. So he really wasn't in a mood to get all kinds of difficult questions or any kind of questions from the press. So I think that really explains it. Each of them Zelensky and Netanyahu both came out looking pleased, saying that they were pleased and all that. The White House said that the meetings were good. So I don't think you should read anything more into it.
But I guess the transparency that you normally see from the White House means that days like today feel very different for the global press who are there. And I take your point about the occasion, I suppose, the more somber tone of the day, I suppose. But a cynic might say, Samuel, is that there's no good news in these stories for President Trump at the moment. Iran is landing poorly with his voters. Some Americans are not, they're at best ambivalent about America's involvement in Ukraine. It feels like a very long way away. In fact, President Trump himself has said that he is involved in Ukraine to protect Europe from Russia. He said that when he was impatient with NATO meeting the same sort of spending limits which President Trump would like to see. So what is it? What has been going on, do you think, today? Is it all of the above, maybe?
Well, I don't know that it's so much... Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, Samuel, back to you.
Sorry, thank you. No, just to come on to Carol's point there on it being Lindsey Graham's funeral, I don't think it's a reasonable argument to suggest that the President of the United States can be taking a somber tone and a step back and be it reasonable to step away from any level of press scrutiny, but also hold high-level meetings with the Prime Minister of Israel and the President of Ukraine on the same day. That just doesn't hold water as an argument. I think it's clear Trump is thinking ahead to the midterms. As I said, the war increasingly unpopular at the start, but even more so as the global pinch is felt with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and other economic factors involved there. Not to mention also 18 servicemen killed since the start of the war in Iran, many more injured, and also millions or billions in damage to US bases.
I don't think you can make a blatant statement that in America, Americans are against the war. That is not true. First of all, the reason the reason, as I was saying, that these two men, Ukraine and Zelensky and Netanyahu, were there was because of Lindsey Graham having died. And of course, Trump is going to be talking to each of them about things related to the wars in their particular country. But, Iran, is people in America realize that Iran is a very dangerous country. They are the largest state sponsor of terrorists in the world. And so really, there's no, yes, there are some people who feel different ways about it and so on, but we still have to understand.
It's one in three Americans in the latest Ipsos poll are against the war, by the way. So I think it is reasonable to suggest that the tide has very much gone against Trump on that one.
Well, if it's 1 in 3 are against the war, that's 2/3 are for the war.
I think it's the other way around, actually, Sam. And I think you probably just.
Sorry, no, you are right. Sorry.
It's actually.
Sorry, it's midnight here in the UK. I apologise.
Yeah, it's 1 in 3 support the war. 33% of Americans in the latest polling support the war in Iran, which means that 2/3 of American people don't support the war in Iran. Dr. Lieberman, the challenge for President Trump was the challenge is to convince Americans that he's saving them from something that they didn't know was a threat to them, that they didn't realize when they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, they weren't lay there worrying about the nuclear capabilities of the Ayatollah Khamenei. They didn't know that, and that's a very hard sell now.
Yes. I have been serving as the terrorist therapist since 9/11, helping people around the world coping with terrorism, including London, including Manchester, and Israel, and of course America. And so in America, I will agree with you that there is a large degree of denial in regard to just how dangerous terrorism is, just how dangerous Iran is, just how close they are to nuclear weapons. But of course, that was one of the things that Netanyahu was talking to Trump about, the intelligence that they gathered that showed that Iran was even closer to nuclear weapons than we all had thought.
But there's a trust issue here, Samuel, isn't there? Unfortunately, there will be so many people this evening will say, how can you trust Benjamin Netanyahu on this topic? He's going to tell you what you think, what you want to hear, Mr. Trump, because he's going to tell you what he wants you to hear, because he's looking for more support, more munitions and more attacks on Iran. Sam?
No, let's also, just look at the surroundings of Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a man who has been under an IOC arrest warrant for war crimes because of his response to the October the 7th attacks on Israel, which has led to 70,000 Palestinians being killed in Gaza, 20,000 of which are children, with many more lost within the rubble, 80% of buildings in Gaza damaged by Israeli attacks, which has been funded by the United States. It's, and I can't stress just how much it makes perfect sense for Trump and Netanyahu to not go before the press, because these are tough questions. Why is Trump welcoming a wanted, someone who has got a war criminal, somebody who is being investigated for war crimes, to the White House? It should be unconscionable whilst the leading cause of debt in the United States is healthcare, medical bills. People are not, as we said there, waking up in the middle of the night thinking. No. People are not. People are not waking up and thinking about Iran in the middle of the night. They're thinking about how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to feed their children. Trump is funding the genocide in Gaza, hand in hand with Netanyahu.
You're getting off the topic.
Okay.
So I know that the UK was a founding member. Okay. The UK, as you presumably know, was a founding member of the ICC, the International Criminal Court. Okay, so I can understand how you feel about it. But America, the United States, isn't a member state of the ICC. And Trump has said, because, as you may well know, Mayor Mamdani of New York has said that he's going to arrest Netanyahu if he comes to New York for the UN meeting in September and so on. And Trump has made it very clear that there's no way that Netanyahu is going to be arrested in America. Now, of course, when Mamdani was saying all these things, Mamdani is very anti-Israel, very anti-Semitic, and so on. When he was saying, after he first made this announcement, there were killings. That 2 men were killed: a Chinese man and a Jewish man wearing a yarmulke, a Jewish prayer hat. And then Netanyahu came to Washington, D.C. Now, Mamdani has been trying to get people all excited about killing or being very much against Netanyahu. And so Netanyahu was in grave danger when he came to D.C., and Trump has announced that he had extra security for him and all of that. And so, but we don't believe and the head of the prosecutor of the ICC, Karim Khan, he himself has been dethroned because of sexual misconduct allegations. So it's
but that doesn't change the reality in Gaza, by the way.
Oh, and Gaza, people who keep trying to say that there's a genocide, that Israel is committing genocide, that is so wrong. I was just in Israel helping people with coping with October 7th, and Israel is not committing genocide. Israel is trying to protect itself, and Netanyahu has made that clear.
By killing 20,000 children as well as 50,000, if not more, civilians. 20,000 children dead. What?
Those figures
where are these children? Where are they? Did they disappear into thin air? No, they were killed by U.S. and Israeli bombs on Gaza. It's frankly lunacy to deny that they have been killed by the Israeli military. You can call it genocide or not, but they have been killed. They have been killed by the IDF. Have they not?
Okay.
Or do you dispute that figure? Or
I do dispute it, but first of all, Hamas takes advantage they're really great at PR. And what they do is they take children and they take hospitals, they hide in hospitals, they hide in schools, and they take children and put them in front of them and Palestinians and hold them in front of them. And so then if Israel, shoots them because they're shooting at the IDF, then then they say, well, Israel is committing genocide. If they're not committing genocide, they're trying to get rid of Hamas, who is a terrorist organization who wants to get rid of Israel. Iran has said for years, death to Israel, death to America.
Okay, we have to end it there.
Even if that were true.
We've come to the end of the
even if
time,
that were
guys,
true,
you both
children
put
have
up a
still been
very,
murdered, and I think that's
good
unconscionable.
defense. You both put up a very strong defence of each of your positions. Thank you so much. Samuel Sweek there and Dr. Carol Lieberman. Oh, you can go round and round and round with that topic, can't you? It's one of those you're never going to find two people that can find any joint ground on that. Let me know what you think. GBNews.com/your say. Now, we are going to take a quick break now. Still to come on The Late Show Live.
I will commit in my time in office to get the number of young people who are not in education, employment or training down.
Andy Burnham commits to tackling youth unemployment, but will his policy deliver? And what might it mean if you're on benefits? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again
to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans? Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories.
And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Now, Andy Burnham is going to give parents on benefits £4,500 a year if their children become apprentices under new government plans. Ministers say the payments will remove a financial barrier that can leave families worse off when teenagers start apprenticeship training. Now, currently parents can claim universal credit payments for their children up to the age of 18, but those handouts are withdrawn if they take up an apprenticeship, causing families to lose almost £100 a week. Now, that obviously doesn't make a huge amount of sense, but this package also includes grants of up to £8,000 for smaller businesses to help create 50,000 new apprenticeships. Let me ask my panel, I'm going to ask a guest about this actually. London panel are going to have to wait. I will talk to you very soon. Let's talk to the research fellow at the Policy Exchange, Byron Evans. Good evening, Byron. Thank you so much for joining us. So, what do you make of this suggestion? It seems on paper fairly sensible. We know that particularly white working class boys are not doing well, and apprenticeships might be exactly what suits them. But why is the taxpayer paying for families on benefits for their kids to get trained?
Yeah, no, it's true, and you're right to identify about white British boys. It's actually the demographic least likely to go to university out of any of the prominent demographics. On the apprenticeship welfare reform, I think it's needed. I think it's unfair that if a student goes to university, welfare and universal credit is unaffected, yet if they take up an apprenticeship, it is affected. I think it's also classic Labour policy of using government expenditure to solve their problems. I mean, I think the reforms are needed. Policy Exchange actually advocated for universal technical colleges last year. And Andy Burnham actually endorsed the paper as well. I think we do need a better split between vocational versions of education as well as academic. So yeah.
I absolutely, and I think I'm not sure how great your line is, Byron. I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you, but let's stick with it for now. If the audience can, if the audience can hear you, that's all right with me. I can make it work. When you look at some of these policies that Burnham's coming out with, and obviously a lot of them just basically involve spending money. I mean, he's come in here like a Labour Father Christmas at the moment. He's just handing it out left, right, and centre. How sustainable is it going to be, and do we need to see the detail of some of these policies before we can decide whether everything's going to be marvellous?
Yeah, like a lot of Andy Burnham's reforms, they seem good on paper, but the detail is really lacking. I think the reforms themselves are good, like I said, but I think the actual fundamental issue with youth unemployment are a bunch of crushing economic policies that the government have put out, the raising of national insurance contributions, the increasing of minimum wage. All these policies are contributing to making it really difficult for employers to hire young people, and I doubt giving bursaries is really going to make a meaningful difference, and especially on technical education. I mean, we're talking about jobs here in the manufacturing industries, and with our energy prices, I just don't see the growth in industry that's needed to facilitate all these new jobs.
Yeah, because we've also seen some shocking statistics, which we're going to go into later, about the number of millionaires that have left the UK in the last couple of years is genuinely quite shocking. The tax revenues are highly likely to start to go down. How do you think he's got off, though, in terms of the start, Byron, Andy Burnham, on many of these policy issues, particularly relating to the economy? Does he seem to you like he's got off to a strong start?
Yeah, I think so. I think it does in some ways show a departure from Starmer's leadership. I think he's put in some strong sort of sugar rush policies that sound very good, almost populist in some ways, the policy on bus fares, for example. But I think it really remains to be seen. The proof will be in the pudding once Parliament comes back in September and the policies get scrutinised and the Labour Party have to vote. And especially around welfare reform, I think they'll really struggle. And once push comes to shove, I think the policies, he'll begin to struggle with how he's going to implement them.
How fortunate has he been that the timing of this means that Parliament is in recess at the moment?
Yeah, I think it is good. I mean, he can set out his executive mandate, he can build a bit of rapport with the country. But like I say, fundamentally, he can't make any changes until Parliament sits and scrutinises his policies. And when you talk about the reforms to education, for example, these reforms aren't going to come in until 2028, and it requires the devolution settlements to be sorted. I think he's making a good start in terms of politics, but I doubt over time that the support will be maintained, frankly.
Okay. All right, Byron. Thank you so much. Research fellow at the Policy Exchange, Byron Evans. There, let me ask my panel and let me go to London on this now, and how you guys feel about this news about the apprenticeships and these families that are on benefits, Benjamin, getting a boost because of this. £4,500 extra a year to parents on benefits if their child starts an apprenticeship. What do you make of it?
Well, I think I would look at this as a rational investment, because when you've got a scenario that they could lose, as you said earlier, £100 a week, then that means that there is an obvious disincentive, and many of these families will probably have little financial flexibility, and so it's obviously going to lead to fewer young people taking up apprenticeships and skills training. And I think one of the consequences of that is not just the immediate failure of that, because it leads to more people who aren't in education, employment or training, but it's the fact that most likely that will then become a habit. You know, it goes from the situation to the way they expect their lives to be, and that is far more expensive to the taxpayer than £4,500. And also, to put it in another context, you know, we wouldn't flinch at £4,500 for upfront for people going to university, for example. You know, tuition fees are less than the actual cost of the course, and so is this not a sensible way to use some of the money for people that aren't going to go down an academic route?
I guess it's the equivalent of, so £4,500 would be the equivalent of, say, 6,250 quid income for a working person. And I just feel like those of us who are working really hard, we're now just going to be normalising this idea that we are going to be subsidising people who aren't working as much, and also now subsidising them to help the next generation. I'm just slightly worried. Listen, in principle, I think it is rational, Paul, and I'd love to know what you hear about this, but I'm really worried about this direction of travel, that the state is the solution to every problem.
Well, unfortunately, we have a socialist government who believe that is the be-all and end-all to absolutely everything. And we all know, even Benjamin knows, that you don't solve a welfare problem with more welfare in the same way as you don't tax yourself to growth. And this is a problem, ostensibly, that was created under Tony Blair, because that gap between 16 and 18 is the difference between leaving school and going to university. So for many years, everybody was encouraged to go to university, go to university, go to university. So it meant that parents were given, if they were on benefits, were given money up until that child was 18. Now it's bridging that gap. But it also exposes the fact that there are tens of thousands of families in the UK that, for whatever reason, have actually made a choice to live this way. And what they are ostensibly saying to their child is, if you go and better yourself, I won't have £100 a week or £100 a month or whatever it is. And I think we need to look at that as a societal issue more than anything else. Of course, I come at this from the centre right, so I don't think that this is the solution. I didn't grow up in a wealthy family by any stretch of the imagination, but I understand next to zero about anything about benefits. Now, there must be people out there that know absolutely everything about benefits and just play the system, and all this is exposing is that there are more and more people playing the system, Bev. Yeah, I think that's very hard to argue with, actually. Let me ask my panel here. Matthew, what do you make of the idea that, you know, Andy Burnham has identified this skills drought that we have in the UK? I don't know whether it's similar here in America, and particularly with the advent of AI, the laptop class, those jobs are going at the most astonishing rate. We need plumbers, electricians, mechanics, engineers, we need them.
And so he's right to incentivise people to do this rather than going to university. But what does it say if you get an extra boost of money if you're claiming from the state already?
Well, the United States is facing almost exactly the same situation. For a generation or two, young people were encouraged to go to college, and now we are refocusing on the trades, on the skilled trades. I do think that Paul made such an excellent point. You are now creating an additional government program, which leads to expectations, which over the line, over time, diminishes one's desire to go out and work. There is dignity in work, be it white-collar work or blue-collar work, the trades, or an office. And to drive someone's desire down or to create a government program, for every British pound that the taxpayer pays, it goes through Westminster, it goes through London, it's taken by bureaucrats and civil servants, and then it's doled out to individuals at a lower rate. So the dollar or the pound in this instance is worth less. And it goes out and creates the next generation of people who are somehow dependent on government, and that is not a long-term solution for Great Britain.
No, but in the short term, we have this awful problem, Eric, of 1 million kids between the age of 16 and 24 that aren't in education, employment or training. They're called NEETs, and they're sitting at home in their parents' houses playing Xbox or PlayStation, whatever it is, looking at Instagram all day. And I like the idea that this kind of system would get them off their backsides and into a trade.
But the problem with this, and this in theory, it's a good idea. However, given the fact that you're already targeting those who are receiving social safety net programs, what about the actual working class who might actually look at something like this is a good idea, but simply don't have the resources because they're already stretched? So you have basically what we're seeing here in the United States, where you have the well-off who don't need it, and then you have those who are the poor who are already getting aid, but then there's those who are working who simply would love to do something like this, but then where are the resources for them? So I think what needs to happen is, I think this, if this could possibly be expanded, then I think you cast a wider net, and I think there's greater investment opportunity. But I think where it is right now, you're still going to have this squeeze, because the working class are now going to continue to struggle in terms of how do they actually get over the hump, and I think that could be problematic.
Yeah. Are you realising quite how socialist the UK is now? Quite like it. Are you realising how socialist we are in the UK now?
Well, we can.
Is it looking like the land of milk and honey for you, Eric Howe?
Do I need to get my passport?
I'll swap. I'll come here, you can go there. We're doing a one in, one out, but that's not what I mean by that service.
One of the ways we solve this problem in the United States is there's a gentleman by the name of Mike Rowe who is really invested in the skilled trades, and over the last 10 or 15 years, his foundation, the Mike Rowe Works Foundation, an NGO, has raised money to then invest in the skilled trades. I think in a place like Great Britain and other soft socialist countries like most of Western Europe, there is not a desire to invest as the individual because so much of your money goes to the government to begin with.
That is such a great point, because you have so many more of those non-governmental organisation initiatives in this country than we do in the UK. And I'm not a massive fan of NGOs often. Sometimes there's a lot of them around the world that are grifting off various governments around the world. But the idea that an individual wants to do good and will invest their money in it, so you think we should be accommodating and giving tax relief to people that want to do those sorts of services?
Absolutely. Our tax structure in the United States empowers and encourages people to donate to nonprofits and NGOs to solve those problems that government is not particularly equipped to solve.
Yeah. Right, okay, moving on. It's so interesting. Let me know what you think at home. Still, gbnews.com/your say. I'm going to read your messages as we go to a break, because still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. Europe is still on fire. The wildfires are raging. It's not all climate change, though. We'll bring you the latest developments on that story. And why have 600,000 mosquitoes been released in Washington, D.C.? Tell you in a minute.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. So it's been a very busy day here in Washington, D.C. Vladimir Zelensky is in town and also Netanyahu for the funeral of Senator Lindsey Graham. You may not be familiar with him. He was a real kind of war hawk. You know, I don't think that's not inappropriate to say that, is he?
No.
I'm not defaming the dead, am I, there? But anyway, Zelensky was in the White House today seeing President Trump. We haven't heard a huge amount, but he's just been talking moments ago. I haven't even seen this yet. Let's hear what President Zelensky said on Capitol Hill just a few seconds ago. Here he is.
Mr. President,
Good to see us. First of all, we are very thankful to the senators and we are very thankful for this discussion. The discussion was with details how to help Ukraine, and we are thankful that this bill is very important. Sanctions pressure on Russia is very important, and really it gives. It's not only about money. How to stop to finance this war, but it's also a big signal to Europe, big signal to Ukraine, big support of our people. So I'm very thankful. I hope that, God bless, we will have positive results.
So, one more question.
how was the visit overall? How was the visit overall? Have you achieved the goal? Will Ukraine receive more missiles? What was the conversation with Donald Trump?
We speak about Patrick missiles. Really, it's true. Now we spoke with the senators about it. So that Ukraine really can produce everything, which can destroy everything from Iranian Shahids to Russian drones and etc. We have drone interceptors, modern systems of electronic warfare. Real problem is anti-ballistic systems and anti-ballistic missiles. And of course, I shared what we need, our needs. I shared it with the president today. I'm very thankful to him for this meeting, and now I shared with senators. So we will try to manage it. This is a big challenge.
What is the Prime Minister
Vote is already at 61, so we are moving to this bill. It's going to pass.
Yeah. The president really would like to go and see this. So thank you all for coming.
We want him to be able to see us pass.
John?
61. Which is why it's done. 61. We're up to 61.
Right, so that was President Zelensky here. I'm sorry if the audio was a little bit tricky. I was struggling to hear some of what he was saying, and he has such a very strong accent as well. He said something about there being very important sanctions on Russia. He said it sends a big signal to Europe. He said what he needs is anti-ballistic systems and missiles. And what was he saying? What was the lady shouting at the end about the vote?
So what we heard just now is procedural vote, so 61 votes. She said there are 61 votes for this, which means it can make it out of the Senate. The thing that they were most concerned about was the funding of Patriot or ballistic missiles, and that is something that is very contentious in the United States Senate. This would potentially nudge the conflict in a different direction. It ratchets things up just a bit, but I do think, from what it sounds like, President Zelensky had a good conversation with both the senators who he was flanked by in that piece, but also at the White House with the president.
So they've been literally voting tonight on whether they're going to fund more war in Ukraine, funded by the American.
It is a Tuesday here in the States, and so senators came in last night, and they will engage in business. It sounds like, given that Zelensky and Netanyahu are in town, that they took up some of this business today.
You don't sit around here. You make things happen pretty quickly, don't you, Eric Ham? I mean, they were in there this afternoon. They're voting on it tonight. This is so different to the British system.
When members want to get out of here, they will move very, very quickly. They will move heaven and earth to get things done. And they are looking towards their August recess. You got to remember, they only got like 3 days. So they're trying to get everything done. President Donald Trump actually wants them to stay to work on the SAVE Act. That's a voting piece of legislation that doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere. In addition to that, we've got a huge nomination on Thursday. But what we're seeing right now is they're trying to get everything done because these guys want to go home.
So that was Zelensky with a smile on his face, basically. I mean, you never really see him smile that much. I suppose you don't when your country's at war. But he didn't. He was treating today as a victory for Ukraine from what he was saying there. Have I understood that?
That's what I took from it. It seems like, and I think the important part here is Zelensky being in town to speak directly with senators to answer those questions. And Eric makes an excellent point. At the end of the week, early next week, these senators and members of Congress go on a 6-week vacation, August recess, to go back to their home districts.
Okay. 6 weeks, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Now, Axios is reporting new figures suggesting the United States has lost billions of dollars in tourism revenue after a sharp fall in Canadian visitors. The Canadian government report says travel to the US fell by a quarter last year, with many tourists choosing domestic or overseas holidays instead. The decline follows trade tensions, tariffs, and President Trump's repeated comments about Canada becoming America's 51st state. So let me ask my panel here and also in London. Are you very disappointed that Canadians are no longer coming to America?
I've been to Canada twice this year, and I know our friends from Alberta out in the West love the United States, so it's always good to see my conservative friends in Canada.
Yeah. Okay. Right. We'll discuss that after the break, but still to come this evening.
He was a tough cookie. Okay, I have to veer from this for a second. He was a tough cookie, Darlene, but he was beautiful.
Washington says farewell to Senator Lindsey Graham, who died suddenly a couple of weeks ago. More on that next. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Right, we are now going to talk about Canada and how disappointed the Americans are that Canadians travelling to America fell by 25% last year. They just don't want to come here. Why might that be? I'm guessing it's because they don't like President Trump, because the whole of Canada, it seems to me, Matthew Hurt, has a terrible case of Trump derangement syndrome.
You might absolutely be right, but what I think is important is all of those great British visitors who traveled from Great Britain to visit during the World Cup. So the Canadians can stay home, and we'll take British visitors, Scottish visitors,
Yes.
Spanish visitors.
Canadians are idiots, Eric Cameron, if they don't come to this amazing country, aren't they?
But Canadians also had the World Cup, so they had it. Canada had it. U.S. had it. Mexico had it. But not only are Canadians no longer coming to the United States, they're no longer buying U.S. American spirits, which has put a massive dent in many of the liquor companies. Companies like Jim Beam are going out of business as a result of that. In addition to not traveling here, what you're seeing in places like Las Vegas, other massive tourist destinations in the United States, Canadians have simply walked away, and it's been a drag on local economies all throughout the country.
Is that because they don't like Trump, or is that because of tariffs specifically on the alcohol?
It's not only because of the tariffs, but also when President Donald Trump came into office, we got to remember he was talking about making Canada the 51st state, and that has been something that he has been talking about for quite some time, which is why it's not the Canadian government that has implemented this ban. It is actual people themselves who have refused to come to the United States.
He'd have been doing them a favour, wouldn't he, Paul Cox? I'll never forget what the Canadians did to the truckers. What Trudeau did to the truckers told me everything I ever need to know about Canada.
Well, what it did more than anything, and we'll get back to that in a minute, is it exposed
It exposed it for what it was. It was, if you have a view that we don't agree with, particularly around the pandemic, we are going to shut your life down. We're not just going to shut your ability to communicate, we're going to shut your ability to exist down. And that was obviously a huge issue. There's a couple of things we haven't mentioned with regards to Canada. The Canadian dollar's quite weak. I've got a family in Canada. I've actually got them in Saskatoon in Saskatchewan, which is basically like saying they're like the Portsmouth of Canada. It's like if there's a big council estate in Portsmouth to talk of, then Saskatoon is the big council estate in Canada. My family, they branched out, but they settled with their own type of people. But I know that the Canadian people, the Canadian dollar is quite weak at the moment. So if you're coming into the US, that's going to hurt as well. There's a big sentiment in Canada as well at the moment around Canadian first, buying Canadian products first. So it's not all about Trump. And if they aren't going because of Trump, that would be mental.
We need to go. First hour's over. We got 2 more still to go, and we're going to have a quick look at your weather first. See you in a minute.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, this is your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's a bit more rain to come across northern parts today, whilst further south the dry and hot weather continues with temperatures in the southeast higher than yesterday. Let's first though talk about the rain across northern areas. A band of rain, not especially heavy this morning, but could pep up into something but more persistent, running across Northern Ireland into central parts of Scotland. And there are a few outbreaks of rain across other northern areas too, and here it's quite cloudy. More sunshine there across central southern parts of England in particular, and in the southeast, like I said, markedly hotter than yesterday. Highs of around 35 Celsius. Could be the 7th day this year where somewhere in the UK exceeds 35. Into the evening, and it's generally dry across northern parts of Scotland. A few outbreaks of rain here and there, maybe even some glimmers of sunshine, but generally quite cloudy. Wetter across central and eastern areas. A band of rain which could be a bit heavy at times continues through the evening and the start of the night. Northern Ireland will see most of the rain having cleared through, so a drier end to the day here. And across the bulk of England and Wales, it's going to be a fine end to the day as well. The clearer skies towards the southeast. A lot of the rain across Scotland will clear away as we go overnight, but there is some further rain set to come in from the west through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Outbreaks of rain mainly across western parts of Scotland, a bit further south as well. Fresher air in the north means temperatures here could drop to single figures in some prone spots, but further south it's another warm night to come. Temperatures holding up in mid to high teens Celsius. More showery rain across northern parts in particular through tomorrow. Some of this turning heavy, even thundery, especially across northern parts of Scotland through the day. Watch out for some higher rainfall totals building up here. Further south, apart from a few showers perhaps around some southern coastal parts, it is going to be dry, but not as hot as it has been today. Temperatures peaking around 28 Celsius.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis,
in the car,
in the kitchen,
GB News breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in,
I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Very good evening, good morning, live from Washington, D.C. This is Bev Turner on GB News with the stories shaping Great Britain and the United States of America tonight.
Virtually everyone, Republican or Democrat, liked Lindsay. Well, not everybody, but it sounds good. Not everybody.
I love his honesty. Trump giving a very frank eulogy at Senator Lindsey Graham's memorial service today. Lindsey Graham died very suddenly 2 weeks ago. We'll be discussing Graham's huge impact on the world of politics with my panel here in DC. Also tonight.
I will commit in my time in office to get the number of young people who are not in education, employment or training down.
Our very own Mr. Ben, that reference might be lost on the younger people. He keeps popping up as different occupations, doesn't he? This time selling us apprenticeships in a high-vis jacket. Good news, if you're on benefits, you're going to get more money if your kids sign up to one of these courses. But tonight his economic plans have been given a bump in the road. He's been told firmly no more borrowing. So is he going to spook the markets?
We've got family here who's expecting us to be here, so we were quite worried the flight was going to get cancelled, so we just didn't know what was happening.
We've got family here, so we've travelled over, keeping calm and carrying on. Fires continue to rage in southwest France. Our reporter Will Godley has been speaking to Brits who are still there as cities are evacuated. We'll bring you the latest also tonight.
First of all, you're saying you take responsibility for it and it was a mistake, and yet you won't apologise because you're blaming Nigel Farage for amplifying it.
I think we also need to talk about a double standard.
No, you keep taking the conversation on.
I know how Victoria Derbyshire feels there. I had a conversation a bit like that last night with one of Zach Polanski's supporters. He has responded in the last couple of hours to widespread criticism after sharing this social media post of a guy wearing a T-shirt with a guillotine which appeared to be directed at Nigel Farage. I'm going to be discussing the highs and lows of that particular issue. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Delighted to say that keeping me company in the studio this evening, I've got Republican strategist Matthew Hurt, US political analyst Eric Ham, and in London I've got journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth and GB News contributor Paul Cox. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for joining me this evening. And as we can see, Matthew Hurt still has his moustache.
A beautiful moustache.
He hasn't listened to my advice. Say again, Paul.
I said it's a beautiful moustache. I like the Hurtster's moustache.
No.
The hamster and the Hurtster is what I'm calling them tonight. And I like, I like Matthew.
Apparently, he's coming to London to see you.
He is.
And he said you're going to try out the moustache on whether he gets any success with British women based on that moustache. I've told him he's got no chance because he looks like a porn star.
Imagine coming to this country, trying to attract British women, hanging out with me, and having a moustache. I mean, if he does succeed, there should be some sort of record or at least an article written about it.
Benjamin just looks appalled.
Do you know, I had a moustache at one point, and GB News viewers made it very clear that I should not have that moustache. But you know, good luck attracting British women. I'm not sure I have much advice on that particular topic.
I think Paul Cox is a safer wingman in that environment for you, Matthew. Right, moving on. Shall we talk about some proper news? Andy Burnham has been warned that there is no scope for government borrowing to fund his cost of living pledges and defence spending commitments. The National Institute of Economic and Social Research says that ministers should instead raise taxes or cut spending elsewhere ahead of October's budget. The think tank also warns that inflation could stay higher for longer because of the economic impact of the Iran war. So let me go to Benjamin and Paul Cox on this issue. No scope for borrowing. It's not really a shock, is it? We've got so much borrowing, Paul. We can barely pay off the interest on an hourly basis. We don't get anywhere near it.
No, our interest is incredibly high, into the billions a year on interest alone. So that means you're giving away hundreds of billions of taxpayers' pounds just to pay for the borrowing you did on their behalf. We'll let that sink in for a few minutes. Look, first of all, I'd like to go back to the Iran issue tied into this. I said this at the end of February, beginning March this year, the second that war started, that it would be used politically within the UK. It's incredibly convenient to do so. Now, of course, I'm not unaware of the impact it does have on us here in terms of fuel, but that's come down in terms of some other things. But really and truly, it doesn't justify any of the spending and borrowing that went before, and it will not justify any of the spending and borrowing that comes after. So I'm sorry, that's a weak excuse. And we prepare, actually, because what do you want? Do you want terrorism sponsored by Iran all over the world, or do you want to pay a little bit extra on fuel? But as for what Burnham's doing, look, this honeymoon period is not going to last. I think what we've seen in the last week is that this is just the same guy with a different pair of glasses. There is not a lot of difference between him and Keir Starmer, other than a slight charisma upgrade. But obviously, a slug would have a charisma upgrade on Keir Starmer. So I'm not impressed, and I think that lots of people that are looking from this from a perspective of wanting to grow the economy in the UK and make Britain better again, are also looking at this thinking is absolutely nothing. He doesn't speak of anything with any gravitas. He has no political backbone in the same way that Starmer did. He seems to be very parochial, he seems to be very localised, and he seems to talk as if he's the mayor of Great Britain rather than Prime Minister of a struggling country, Bev.
Yeah, Benjamin, what do you make of it? Would you want to defend Andy Burnham's policies?
Well, I mean, borrowing was 15% lower in the 2025 financial year compared to the previous one. And actually borrowing in June, the most recent month we obviously have figures for, is down a third year on year. So actually we're not borrowing more than they were under the Conservatives. So that's a positive. I don't think, though, that means that we should borrow more. And you have to look at, for example, the fact that they failed under Keir Starmer to cut welfare. Some more creative ways in order to resolve the expanding welfare bill would be a sensible argument. For me, I think the triple lock, which guarantees above inflation rises in handouts to retirees, is too expensive and unsustainable. So I would suggest that would be one thing to cut in order to fund getting people into jobs and giving young people better prospects, and some of his other suggestions that he's been making tonight. But as for Andy Burnham as a character, well, I think the truth is that we are waiting to get a full picture of his prime ministership. I think he said that some of the bigger questions he's going to answer in the next week or so, and then go on a tour of the country doing sort of town halls and soapbox speeches around the country in August. So we'll get a better idea of him then. But you can't deny that he has made a much stronger and clearer impression in his first 7-8 days as Prime Minister than Keir Starmer, than Rishi Sunak, than Theresa May, certainly than... I think maybe Liz Truss did make a clear impression, it just wasn't a very effective one. And so he's got the comms right. He's doing very well in the polls compared to Keir Starmer. He's way ahead of Nigel Farage. And so I think things are positive for Andy Burnham.
I mean, he's not way ahead in the polls, is he? I think the latest poll that we saw this week, the first one was like 28 to 24%. You're right, you might say that's... I mean, it's certainly higher than it was when Starmer was in office, no doubt about that.
It is, and forgive me, what I mean, you're correct on that poll, but what I mean specifically to Andy Burnham is that when people are asked who should be Prime Minister, he beats every other candidate, and he beats Nigel Farage by a wide margin. And in fact, he has a better public approval rating, which is an ironic description of how we rate politicians, because it's rarely approval at all, but he has a better rating than Keir Starmer did in the week after he won a landslide election. So that's quite a significant step forward compared to his predecessor.
Oh, no doubt about it. Let me ask my guys here in America about this. He's being warned, you can't borrow any more money. You have the same problem here in America. The debt is extortionate. What do we do in the long run? Do we... Because people keep talking about, economists and financiers have been talking for years now about this Ponzi scheme that is our financial system, that it just can't keep being this hot and this much debt. At some point, it's going to go pop.
You're absolutely right, Bev. The debt is a serious issue in the United States. It's a serious issue in Great Britain and other developed Western democracy. I do think that Benjamin made a couple of excellent points. The charm offensive on social media by Andy Burnham has been interesting as a viewer from the United States, but Paul made some really excellent points too about the cost of government and the cost of borrowing and the cost of administering a labor-led socialist state. It's very expensive. It's bad for Great Britain, and the spending and debt here in the United States is bad for us in the long run as well.
Yeah. Well, how has subsequent governments allowed this to happen, Eric? Our whole kind of financial system, as I say, it appears it's not sustainable, and at some point it will topple, and that terrifies me.
Yeah, and what you're seeing, there used to be what were called blue dogs, people who wanted to make sure basically you spend as you go, you don't borrow.
Yeah.
And like the Blue Dog Coalition in Congress right now is gone. It no longer exists, or if it does, it's so weak and anemic that it can't get anything done. And when you look at battles over the extension of the spending limit, we raise that every single time, but we never actually put hard cuts in place. The last time we did cuts, or cuts were made, was when President Obama was in office, and you had Republican Congress that implemented sequestration, which basically handcuffed how much the president could spend and actually called for cuts. Of course, when he left, we didn't see that. But I think that's something that we need to see implemented, which would enforce massive cuts on government. But also here in the United States, I think there needs to be more aggressive taxing, particularly on the wealthy.
Okay, let me go now to a guest on this, Simon Hunt, who is the city editor for City AM. Good evening, good morning to you, Simon. So this concern that I raise, and which has been raised to Andy Burnham as well, this idea you can't borrow any more money. Like, this inflation is just going to keep going and keep going. I'd love your assessment on that.
Yeah, so this is the report by the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, a well-respected economic institute in Westminster. They have made the scale of the challenge clear to Andy Burnham. It isn't sustainable for him to increase borrowing. The UK already has very high rates of borrowing, and worse of all, we also have the highest costs of borrowing of virtually any major economy. And so the opportunity to increase borrowing is very slim indeed. We're sort of at the point of hitting a ceiling on that. But at the same time, of course, is the government that has come in effectively on the promise to increase government spending, because John Healey, the new Chancellor, previously resigned in Keir Starmer's government because he said defence spending wasn't high enough. It follows that he's going to massively increase defence spending, and he has to find a way to fund it. And what the National Institute has said is, well, the only way you can fund this is either by massively cutting spending or by increasing taxation. Given the record of the Labour government, the previous two budgets of Rachel Reeves, it seems like taxation is the more likely outcome rather than cutting spending, but we shall see.
And we've been hearing for a little while, I was hearing even from sources within London that Labour were going to come after your assets. I remember one insider saying to me, they're coming after your assets. What do they mean by that, Simon?
Well, I mean, one of the things that Andy Burnham is apparently a supporter of is what's known as a land value tax. This is a tax on the value of land that property owners have. It's effectively a type of wealth tax, and they would replace potentially council tax with that. That isn't, though, an immediate solution to the government's spending difficulties, because such a tax would be incredibly complicated to implement, and it would take several years before the receipts would start to come in. So it's certainly an idea that Andy Burnham has flirted with in the past. I'm not sure that will help them in the short term.
So a garden tax, effectively. So if you have a big garden, then your council tax will, or what we would see as the equivalent of council tax, will reflect the footprint of your property, maybe. Presumably that's what he means by that.
That I think is the idea. So rather than the actual property itself, it would be the size of the land, the number of the square foot. What it doesn't mean exactly is it's precisely in proportion to that, because if you're a owner of a massive farm, you wouldn't pay 1,000 times that of someone in a house, because it's about how much that land can be developed. But that is essentially the principle, yeah.
Yeah, and we've also heard rumours about this inheritance tax change. I guess that's an example of coming after your assets as well. We don't have a clear idea yet where he sits, do we, on a wealth tax? We're starting to get a picture, but I think he's kind of warming us up for that, maybe, about taxing the rich. And we've seen a story that we're going to cover in a little while about how many millionaires have actually left the UK, record number of millionaires. That policy will always backfire, though, won't it? Because the tax receipts will go down so dramatically.
It's very difficult to pull off, and we've seen evidence in the last few days of Scotland's decision to raise income tax on the highest earners backfiring, possibly leading to a reduction in the amount of tax receipts, because once taxes get to a certain point, people get fed up and bluntly they leave. They find more welcoming places to go, and that is always the danger that Burnham will face if he goes down this route.
And how would you sum up the reaction in the city so far? I mean, he's only been there for not even 2 weeks yet, Andy Burnham, which is remarkable to think about. But how would you sum up the feeling in the city towards him and his policies?
Well, I think there is, on the one hand, there's a bit of relief on his choice of Chancellor, because the city was most afraid of Ed Miliband. They considered him the most left-wing of the potential candidates for Chancellor, and the fact that we've dodged having Ed Miliband is some mild comfort to the city. But at the same time, the expectation that spending is going to increase inevitably means more taxes as far as the city is concerned. And one of the things they're also concerned about is the prospect of bank taxes, which has been discussed within the Labour government as well. So it's not necessarily particularly reassuring news so far, but we'll see the scale of the pain in the first budget in the autumn.
What do you mean by bank taxes?
So there's been chatter within the Labour ranks about introducing a new levy on banks. Banks have had a pretty successful couple of years, both in the UK and the US, and there's talk of trying to take advantage of some of those profits, if you like.
Right. Okay. Would that affect people that don't work in banks? Would it affect banking customers, for instance, or are we just talking about the big banks, the traders, the investors, etc.?
I mean, ultimately, anything that increased the cost of banks will find its way through to the customer in some form or other in terms of the offers that they're able to give to consumers. But the most immediate effect will be on the banks themselves, on how many staff they choose to hire in London, whether they choose to move operations to other parts of Europe as a response.
Okay, Simon, thank you so much. Simon Hunt there, the City editor for City AM. Right, moving on, I think now. Oh, it's always that hour we don't have any breaks. Still not got used to the fact that we have 2 hours without any particular breaks. Were you surprised to see that how young that magazine editor looks? Did you know that we have magazine editors which are 15 years old? No, Simon Hunt did a brilliant job. I'm sure he's not 15. He just looked it.
Really great grasp of economics, though. And when I think now, I've seen Andy Burnham insert himself into so many pop culture references. I think what he's missing is the Beatles' tax man, because this is a system where if the government is not allowed to borrow, the government is going to have to tax. And there are so many layers of taxes in Great Britain. Something like what you called the inheritance tax, I really think your viewers and listeners should call the death tax. It is a tax when you die, and it disproportionately impacts farmers. It disproportionately impacts people who have saved to pass their inheritance on to their children or to other family members. And there are so many dangerous levels of taxation, which really, in the broader scheme of things, the British economy, it prevents people from making wise financial decisions that would then stimulate the British economy.
Yeah, I'm starting to get the picture. We're still trying to work out who Andy Burnham is, really. I mean, I know him. I've met him on multiple occasions, but we don't know who he is in leadership. He's been a mayor for 10 years, Eric. And I think the picture that I'm getting is if he's not careful, and I can see how well-intentioned a lot of these policies are, particularly around getting young people off the dole and into work, etc. If he's not careful, he's going to create an environment where there's even less incentive for anyone to do anything and go to work or open a business or save.
Well, it seems to me like already he's got one hand tied behind his back if he can't borrow. The term that I was actually looking for was debt ceiling. That's what we have here in the United States, but we blow through that all the time. But I think what you're seeing play out there is what other options does he have aside from taxing? And I think what he's trying to do with this 4,500 is to get people working. That's actually how you can actually draw. If you have a much larger tax base, then it makes it so much easier for you to actually draw in revenue. And right now, I think that's what his struggle is.
Yeah. Okay. Don't forget, we are still going to tell you as I sit here itching my leg under the desk. Sorry, Matthew, but I'm itching my leg under the desk because I think I've been bitten by a mosquito. And we're going to be talking to the man who's introducing an extra 600,000 mosquitoes into Washington, D.C. And I'll tell you why, but also still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
He was a tough cookie, okay? I have to veer from this for a second. He was a tough cookie, darling, but he was beautiful.
Washington said goodbye today to one of America's most influential Republican senators. He passed away suddenly just a couple of weeks ago. How was he so effective at pushing his brand of neoconservatism in the Republican Party, and how did he turn President Trump from political opponent to golf buddy? This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. Right, we're still here. It seems silly to say welcome back when all we did was go da da da. We're still here. I hope you enjoyed that little stingy interlude. Anyway, have a watch of this.
And whether we live or die, we are the Lord's possession. Happy from now on are those who die in the Lord, so it is, says the Spirit, for they rest from their labors.
in the Republican Party and some Democrats as well were in Washington today to bid farewell to the late Senator Lindsey Graham following memorial services at the US Capitol and a funeral at Washington's National Cathedral. Now, one of the Republican Party's most influential foreign policy figures, Graham was a staunch foreign policy interventionist. He was a defense hawk who fiercely backed the war on terror under President Bush. Now, while a reliable conservative ally, he would also break party lines to broker bipartisan compromises on judicial nominees, immigration, and wartime detainee standards. Now, Graham later transformed from one of President Trump's fiercest critics during the 2016 campaign into one of his closest allies, becoming a key voice on Ukraine, Russia, Iran, and national security. President Trump led tributes today, while Vice President J.D. Vance praised Graham's fierce defense of Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh and his unwavering commitment to the causes that he believed in. Lawmakers from both parties remembered the South Carolina senator for his humor, his patriotism, and his willingness to work across political divides. But what was the legacy of the Republican heavyweight? Let me ask my American panel here first of all. And when you look at the people that were in that crowd today, Eric, even I'm delighted to say President Trump's Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, was there on the front row. She's receiving cancer treatments at the moment, so it was lovely to see her there today. But you had Rubio, you had Vance, you had Hegseth. They were all there. No wonder the security was so tight in this city today. I've never seen anything like it. Why were they all there for this man? What was so special about him?
Well, he was an institution, and of course we all know him as being, perhaps the Robin to John McCain's Batman.
Yes.
They were always tied at the hip, and of course, very, very integral in defense issues. But also, Lindsey Graham was also a key stalwart on the Judiciary Committee as well. When I worked in the Senate, particularly at the time of the height of the Iraq War, you had people like John Kerry and Graham and McCain, and those were very hotly contested, fierce debates that took place, and it spoke to not only the comedy, but I think the bipartisanship in terms of where they stood, and the fact that they would reach across the aisle. We know that Senator Lieberman, a Democrat, was someone who worked very closely with Lindsey Graham and John McCain at that time. In fact, we know John McCain had considered Lieberman as a possible running mate. It was that level of bipartisanship that I think many people yearn for, and Lindsey Graham, at least at one time, was someone who people looked to. And then, of course, the transformation that we saw, where you mentioned he went from a deeply fierce critic of Donald Trump to becoming a deeply fierce ally of his. But one thing he never lost was that hawkish mentality, and we saw that play out faithfully until the very end.
He was the, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's kind of the archetypal neocon, wasn't he, really? Ex-military himself, of course. And why did he change in relation to President Trump? What happened, Matthew, to mean that he went on the... I've been on that same journey myself. I'm interested to know why he now respects the president.
Well, of all the things that Senator Graham was and still represents, politically astute and savvy is one of them. And as Eric said just a moment ago, a champion of bipartisanship in the days when bipartisanship in the United States Senate was possible, in the George W. Bush and early days of Barack Obama.
And it isn't now?
Yeah, I don't think it is possible now. We see it with judicial nominations from 30 years ago, where people nominated to the Supreme Court would get 98 or 99 out of 100 votes. And I think in 2015, in the primary cycle, Senator Graham was a fierce critic of Donald Trump. And that was at a time when a number of Republicans thought they could stop what ultimately became an inevitable nomination. And then Senator Graham, being elected from a state that overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump in 3 elections, knew that it was in his best interest in politics to side with the president. president. And he did so, as Eric said just a moment ago, and you said in the tease out to this, the judicial nomination, Senator Graham became a fierce advocate for President Trump's judicial nominations, and even earning the respect of Democrats in the Senate and even left of center members of the Supreme Court who came to his, who eulogized him in public comments over the last couple of weeks. Senator Graham was a champion of bipartisanship, but he also understood what getting reelected meant. And to do that, you have to appeal to the voters of the state. And South Carolina is a very conservative state.
He was a huge supporter of both Zelensky and Netanyahu, largely because he was so keen on war. I mean, President Trump made a joke about it this morning. He was interviewed on Fox News over the phone, and they asked him about Lindsey Graham, and he said, look, he really likes war. And he wasn't kidding, was he? He did a lot of good work for the military-industrial complex. He made a lot of money for people who make bombs.
No, that's right, he did. And we know that he was one of the very few members of Congress, now I won't even say senators, but one of the very few 535 members that was actually pressing Donald Trump to continue this war in the Middle East. And also, too, given that Washington has become so increasingly polarized over these last few years, there was a moment after the Biden election when Kamala Harris returned to the Senate floor after that election, after they had won, and she had become like the first person, the first woman to serve in that role, and she was still senator at the time. And when she came in, Lindsey Graham was in there, and he put up a fist, and they fist bumped each other. And I think that was probably one of the very last expressions of bipartisanship. Yes, it was a hard-fought election. Yes, it was ugly. It was one of the very few times that we had seen an incumbent lose. But through all of that, you had this member who, again, was so supportive of Donald Trump, but recognized that there was this transfer of power that was going to take place, and was willing to work with the opposition party. And so I think that's something we have to commend Lindsey Graham for, recognizing that there is always going to be opposition, but there's always going to be opportunity to work with opposition in order to do the right thing.
Well, let me bring in our panel in London on that, Benjamin and Paul Cox. I don't assume that you might be experts on the life of Lindsey Graham necessarily, which is why I spent a little bit longer here with my Americans. But it sounds in some way, Paul, that actually his death carries a greater symbolism in terms of he has left this earth at a time in which the ability to have conversations across the aisle has also sadly disappeared. And that feels like a very sad indictment, Paul, of our times where we can't bring both sides together. We do it very well here on GB News, but in politics we're seeing it less and less.
Yeah, Lindsey Graham was a behemoth, wasn't he? A huge man in American politics, even from someone who observes. And I've always enjoyed American politics, especially since Donald Trump's come on board, but probably since about 2000. I actually vaguely remember Lindsey Graham being involved in the attempted impeachment of Bill Clinton in the late 90s. So he wasn't... another thing I learned about him since his death is that both his parents died within 15 months of one another when he was in his early 20s, and he had to bring up his 13-year-old sister on his own. Well, a nice human story, not political related, but I think it tells you a lot about a man or a human being when they've had to go through that. But as regards to stepping across the aisle, yes, we live in such bipartisan times now where everybody is kind of zealoted one way or the other, me included. I was talking to Benjamin in one of the breaks, and when I hear someone like Samuel Sweek earlier is so partisan, anti-Israel, I always think, do I speak that way about the subjects that I'm red-meated about? I don't know if I do, I hope I don't, but we all do to some degree, and Lindsey Graham seems to have been able to step away from that occasionally and bring people together for the greater good, which is something very rare. Actually, much like Anne Widdecombe did in her political life as well.
Oh, do you think? Benjamin, do you agree with that definition of Anne Widdecombe? Amazing woman. I admired her enormously, but I don't really think of her as being a bridge builder. Was she, Ben?
No, I think there was firmly a moat around Anne Widdecombe and her views, and you could cross it if you wanted, but she wasn't coming to you. I think it's probably a fair description. But as for Lindsey Graham, of course, you know, I have a limited understanding of him, but I recall a couple of years ago he visited Kiev with Zelensky, and he went with the left-wing Democratic politician Elizabeth Warren to talk about the importance of the US supporting that. And he was asked in that interview, you know, is there waste, is there abuse of taxpayer dollars that's going to Ukraine? And he said, this is the best money we've ever spent. So it's no wonder that President Zelensky, alongside Netanyahu, turned out today for the funeral, because he was a linchpin on issues like that. And, you know, with my politics being shaped by Tony Blair, I'm fairly hawkish myself, and I think that, you know, for me, Lindsey Graham is somebody who understood that you have to fight for the Western values and to stop those imperialists that would encroach on Europe and American values, and that means protecting Israel and protecting Ukraine.
Bev, very quickly, I was specifically talking about fox hunting, the subject of fox hunting. She actually crossed the aisle for fox hunting, very unlike most Conservatives.
Yeah, absolutely. Was he well liked, Matthew, is it fair to say?
I do think that he was liked in Washington, D.C. One of the points where I diverge strongly with Senator Graham and other war hawks is I was sort of became politically aware during the Iraq War and opposed America's invasion of Iraq from high school. I wrote my first ever opinion column was opposition to the Iraq War, and Senator Graham and at the time Senator John McCain really made up that wing of the party for the Republicans, and that is a place where I think as we look back over 30 years of involvement in the Middle East, the global war on terror, it is something that where Senator Graham's time was running out in that regard. America is fatigued. As you said earlier in the show, the poll results that show only a third of Americans support our engagement in Iran. There was a video that was released earlier this week of a behind-the-scenes documentary of Senator Graham ecstatic when the bombs started dropping in Iran, and I do think that is a part of his legacy that I will struggle with. Yeah. Was he a great statesman? Did he bring people together? Yes, and absolutely yes. But to what end in some of these instances? And I'm very skeptical of our continued foreign adventurism, even as a Republican.
I think when we live in a time where we caricature politicians, which we do very much so, we have always done, but it seems more acute at the moment. I think the sadness that I feel about Anne Widdecombe's death is that she didn't know before she died quite how many people held her in such high esteem. If that's fair to say to my British guest, because she often was a figure of fun to other people. I remember one particularly left-wing journalist who has a radio show in the UK saying if he ever wanted to work out how he thought about something, he would consider what Anne Widdecombe would think, and then he would realise how he felt, that he felt the opposite of Anne. And actually, she was often the figure of fun, wasn't she? And people would use her as sort of totemic as a kind of a right-wing politics. But the messages which have come out since her death, you know, I am guilty of this as much as anybody else. I didn't actually appreciate, I don't think, when she was alive, how many great speeches she gave and how many great principles she had. We were too quick to cast her as a sort of comedy figure. I know we didn't on GB News. We gave Anne time and we gave her the respect that she deserved, but I think when politicians die, it does give us cause for thought, actually, and to pause and to think, do we say enough good about politicians, even though nobody is perfect? Anyway, that's just my thoughts on that. Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. The firefighters are working very hard in Europe at the moment to get those fires under control. We will be discussing that in just a moment. Let's have a quick look at your weather. We'll be right back.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, this is your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's a bit more rain to come across northern parts today, whilst further south the dry and hot weather continues with temperatures in the southeast higher than yesterday. Let's first though talk about the rain across northern areas. A band of rain, not especially heavy this morning, but could pep up into something but more persistent, running across Northern Ireland into central parts of Scotland. And there are a few outbreaks of rain across other northern areas too, and here it's quite cloudy. More sunshine though across central southern parts of England in particular, and in the southeast, like I said, markedly hotter than yesterday. Highs of around 35 Celsius. Could be the 7th day this year where somewhere in the UK exceeds 35. Into the evening, and it's generally dry across northern parts of Scotland. A few outbreaks of rain here and there, maybe even some glimmers of sunshine, but generally quite cloudy. Wetter across central and eastern areas. A band of rain which could be a bit heavy at times continues through the evening and the start of the night. Northern Ireland will see most of the rain having cleared through, so a drier end to the day here. And across the bulk of England and Wales, it's going to be a fine end to the day as well. The clearer skies towards the southeast. A lot of the rain across Scotland will clear away as we go overnight, but there is some further rain set to come in from the west through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Outbreaks of rain mainly across western parts of Scotland, a bit further south as well. Fresher air in the north means temperatures here could drop to single figures in some prone spots, but further south it's another warm night to come. Temperatures holding up in mid to high teens Celsius. More showery rain across northern parts in particular through tomorrow. Some of this turning heavy, even thundery, especially across northern parts of Scotland through the day. Watch out for some higher rainfall totals building up here. Further south, apart from a few showers perhaps around some southern coastal parts, it is going to be dry, but not as hot as it has been today. Temperatures peaking around 28 Celsius.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to the Late Show Live. Now, firefighters are battling major blazes in France and Spain as parts of England prepare for a fourth heat wave this summer. On the ground in France to tell us more about this is GB News reporter Will Godley.
It is eerily quiet here on the outskirts of Bordeaux. Many people have already decided to leave the area to escape from the inferno blazing now just 9 miles away. The wildfire there has been described by Emmanuel Macron as the toughest fire France has experienced since World War II. He visited the scene to instruct officials to draw up plans should they be needed if Bordeaux is having to evacuate. Thankfully, for firefighters, the last 24 hours have been crucial for them in this fight against this wildfire as temperatures down slightly. But over the coming few days, those temperatures forecast to rise again into the high 30s, and with it, the risk that this fire will spread further. This is a fire that is bigger than the size of the Isle of Wight, and Brits who have travelled here for their summer holidays, who I've been speaking to, have told me they're worried about what it means for them.
Well, they're a real problem. I mean, it's serious everywhere to the southwest in particular. We live in the southeast, so not directly affected at this point in time, but it's really, really bad.
No, I've got no plan, to be honest. We've got family here who's expecting us to be here, so we're quite worried their flight was going to get cancelled, so we just didn't know what was happening.
It's not just, though, British holidaymakers here, also some 40,000 British expats who live in the region. In total, nearly 250,000 people have been evacuated from their homes, and plans for even more evacuations being drawn up if this fire reaches Bordeaux. Firefighters have been working tirelessly over the last few days to get this fire under control, but local officials say this fire has a mind of its own. They say it's the biggest fire in a century, and although they're fighting hard to get it under the control, that fight is still very much ongoing.
Well, that was Will Godley there for GB News. Thank you, Will. Let me go to my panel on this, and also here and also in London. Now, my big issue with this, fellas, is that we're all being told this is climate change. And I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that, Benjamin Butterworth. Do you want to come in on this? Let me tell you how many people have been arrested in France. This is what you won't see on the BBC. That French authorities, according to Reuters, French authorities have detained 184 people over suspected wildfire-related offences this year during this season. This is idiots that either deliberately or through negligence start fires, and yet we're all supposed to believe this is because we all leave our heating on, or we'd quite like some air conditioning, Ben.
Well, look, the negligent and the dangerous might start these fires, but it's because of the fact that we're experiencing more extreme temperatures, more droughts, low humidity, strong winds, effects associated with climate change, that you can see a mistake or an intentional sabotage end up in situations like this where we have these enormous fires, and we're seeing them all around the world. You know, when you go to parts of Spain at this time of the year, the temperatures can now be in the mid-40s, which is an extreme heat we are not used to historically in Europe. And it should be no surprise that when you've got that kind of change in temperatures and climate, you end up with more wildfires of this nature rather than smaller situations.
We can agree that the planet is heating up, and we can maybe disagree on the reasons for that, that we'd already be putting measures in place, so managing the forestry better, making sure that there's more awareness about not flicking a cigarette onto dry ground, for instance, making sure there's more access to stop fires when they start early on, Paul. Why are we just, seems to be sitting back, putting our hands in the air and saying it's all climate change?
Well, it's incredibly convenient to do so. If you are somebody who is incredibly interested in climate alarmism, then this is perfect, isn't it? It's like I was talking about earlier with the Iran war. That comes along. If you're sitting as a Labour policymaker, you think, great, we've got an excuse to use, and we're going to use it to the nth degree. So this is exactly what is happening with regards to these wildfires. Of course, there is some truth that with warmer weather becomes the right conditions, and with the warmer weather also comes more people being outside, picnicking, entering to the forest. And by the way, if you've got anyone holidaying in the south of France at the moment, and I've got a friend of mine who's holidaying out there, you'll be aware that actually you're not allowed to go into the woods. You're not allowed to go into the forests in southern France. It's absolutely prohibited now. You can't just wander in there and take a cigarette, for instance. And we're seeing all sorts of things going on. I think it's incredibly convenient to use it. And I know, from having a quick scan before I came on air tonight, that they've not yet announced, nobody's announced, apart from these arrests, that there is what the cause of these fires are. Just in my local area last night at about 11 o'clock, it's very dry where I am, someone was letting off fireworks for about 20 minutes. Now, say what you like about fireworks. It's the middle of the summer. It's very unusual in the UK to have fireworks, but we do occasionally for celebrations. And my immediate thought was, looking at how dry the woods are around me, how dry the fields are around me and the grass areas are, that could easily start a fire. So we have to become more and more aware of the way the climate is moving and the way the climate is changing our summers. We just saw on the weather forecast then that there have been 7 days over 35 degrees in the UK. I don't actually think that's that big, but instead of I don't actually know. And instead of scaring the living daylights out of us, we should just talk practically about the way that we need to behave in these situations.
But you must understand.
And what you can control.
The question.
Control the controllables.
Correct.
The question isn't what could start this. Clearly, a mistake or malintent can start this. You must recognise that when you have extreme temperatures, high humidity, droughts, you then have circumstances where you go from a fire to a crazy wildfire like this. You know, scientists have said that the effects of climate change are making it up to 10 times more likely to have wildfires in parts of Europe. We've had the 10 hottest years on record since 2015. Obviously, that is making these scenarios more likely and more dangerous.
I don't think anyone's denying that.
One of the
Well, you
things
just
that
did.
apparently
No, I didn't. I didn't deny that.
You just said it wasn't odd to have temperatures above 35 degrees.
No, if you've lived in Mallorca for the last 10 years and you only had 7 days over 35 degrees, you'd be pretty disappointed. You'd probably move back home.
One of the things that as well that France has done, so they have this controlled burning. So a lot of these hot countries will allow, you have the same thing here, right, in California, brûlage dirigé, I believe it's called in France, and they've been managing that. They've been restricting individuals' abilities to do the controlled burning, particularly apparently in the Mediterranean South. They've made it much more tighter regulated, and that means that the dead wood and the vegetation that would ordinarily have been gotten rid of over the years has built up and built up and built up. So it's just tinder waiting to go off on an occasion like this. If we all agree that the weather is getting warmer, and I have to say I rather like an alfresco lunch, then we've got to get better at controlling the things that are going to start these fires. I think we have to become much more practical about it. Right, moving on. Let me see what we're going to talk about now. Right. Still to come this evening on The Late Show Live. Yeah, here we are.
Economically, what can you do differently? A wealth tax, possibly? The super rich?
I do believe we need a greater sense of fairness and people feeling that things are being done in the right way and a fair way.
Gary Lineker wants a wealth tax. We're going to be talking about that in just a moment. So first of all, we've got to do this funny little thing with the music. You enjoy that?
I love the GB News music.
We are looking for music. We want some requests because we're going to dance during the weather. We've been doing this on Instagram. And last time Matthew Hurt caused an absolute reaction across the women in the UK with his moves. So we are looking for, if you want to get in touch, gbnews.com/YourSay, what would you like us to dance to in the advert break? Eric Ham is going to be forced into making some shapes as well. Right, tomorrow sees a highly anticipated rematch on Capitol Hill, particularly for me. Republican Senator Rand Paul is going to be questioning Dr. Anthony Fauci once again rigorously over the origins of COVID-19. The hearing comes after Paul released more than 1,000 pages of Fauci's private diary entries detailing his behind-the-scenes dealings with President Trump, his thoughts on the lab leak theory, his growing frustration with conspiracy claims. Paul argues the documents raise fresh questions about the government's handling of the pandemic, while Fauci has consistently denied allegations. He covered up the possibility of a laboratory leak in Wuhan, funded potentially by a company that he was working with. Matthew Hurt, do you share my excitement about this tomorrow?
You know, this is very exciting stuff. Senator Rand Paul, Dr. Rand Paul, has been on the front lines of this since the pandemic. He is absolutely the most credible person to ask these tough questions. And it's very clear, as Senator Paul said, that Anthony Fauci will not hit the pre-approved pardon he received in the last administration under Joe Biden will not apply to this kind of testimony. If you lie before Congress in this week, tomorrow, it is going to be a serious problem. And there is a shocking amount of evidence that shows Dr. Fauci was engaged in gain-of-function research that may or may not have been in the Wuhan lab that was funded potentially by the United States government. These are very serious questions, and I think Dr. Fauci should be asked about them and held to account if it comes out that these are all true.
Yeah, and why does it matter? And a Mancunian, a guy called Peter Daszak, who worked for the Eco Health Alliance organization. I called him out personally on Twitter 6 years ago, and he blocked me because he knew I was onto him. So let me tell you, to be there tomorrow for me will be so satisfying. And Eric Ham, you couldn't care less, could you?
Seems a bit revisionist history to me. I think the pandemic was a dark stain on the United States. We certainly did not handle it well. And I think if there are going to be inquiries, it's how do we plan and prepare for the next potential pandemic. We're seeing like those wildfires play out in France. We have wildfires that are playing us here. Why do I think there will be?
Yeah.
Well, I hope there isn't, but in the event that there is, the United States needs to be prepared.
But isn't the importance, you've just hit the nail on the head, because the importance of tomorrow is if, as now is presumed by most authorities across the world, particularly also your intelligence communities here have confirmed this, if it is proven beyond any doubt whatsoever that COVID-19 came from research being conducted in that laboratory, then there should never be another pandemic like that. Because you have to work out where this virus came from in order to stop there being any. You've got to learn lessons.
Exactly. Well, you know, one of the mistakes that the United States always makes is that we basically prepare for the next war by acting as if we're fighting the current war, and that's going to be the war in the future. We don't know what the next pandemic, hopefully there will not be one.
There should never have been that one.
But the issue is, as a lawmaking body, you're bringing Dr. Fauci in, who no longer works in the government, and I think the people that you need to be bringing in are the people who are currently in government.
No.
The issue needs to be, how are they preparing and planning? We have an outbreak right now that's playing out in the United States. What is the government doing? So if there's questions that needs to be asked, Rand Paul needs to be asking those questions.
Well, let me go to London. Paul Cox, I will be there tomorrow morning. I will be there first in the queue to sit in that room to watch. I feel like I have a personal dog in this fight. I was cancelled, I was criticised, I was called a granny killer, and I was shouting to anyone that would listen to me that this was a man-made virus, and we needed to first and foremost work out why, who, when, and hold those people to account, Paul.
I was very excited to see that tweet this afternoon, when you put that out to say, I think maybe even been a day before now, to say that you were going to be there. I thought, such serendipity. If you'd gone back, 5-6 years, Bev, and someone could have just whispered to you, perhaps it could have been me, you wouldn't have had a clue or what. You'd be like, who the hell's this bloke? And if I'd said to you, you're going to be there to see this tomorrow, you wouldn't have been able to believe it. The sequence of events to get you there, Bev, is incredible on its own. But as regards to Fauci, we do need revisionism on this hamster. We absolutely do, because we need to know the truth. The truth is important.
And Benjamin Butterworth's face is telling a story, but we don't have time to come to you. Apparently, Benjamin, the truth isn't important to you. I know it is, so I'm hoping you'll be watching tomorrow night when I'll tell you exactly what's happened. But we've still got another hour of this to come. And we're going to be debating whether we should be panicked that millionaires are fleeing Britain. And I'll tell you about the mosquitoes. I've been promising to tell you all about them. Don't go anywhere.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, this is your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's a bit more rain to come across northern parts today, whilst further south the dry and hot weather continues, with temperatures in the southeast higher than yesterday. Let's first though talk about the rain across northern areas. A band of rain, not especially heavy this morning, but could pep up into something but more persistent, running across Northern Ireland into central parts of Scotland. And there are a few outbreaks of rain across other northern areas too, and here it's quite cloudy. More sunshine there across central southern parts of England in particular, and in the southeast, like I said, markedly hotter than yesterday. Highs of around 35 Celsius. Could be the 7th day this year where somewhere in the UK exceeds 35. Into the evening, and it's generally dry across northern parts of Scotland. A few outbreaks of rain here and there, maybe even some glimmers of sunshine, but generally quite cloudy. Wetter across central and eastern areas. A band of rain, which could be a bit heavy at times, continues through the evening and the start of the night. Northern Ireland will see most of the rain having cleared through, so a drier end to the day here. And across the bulk of England and Wales, it's going to be a fine end to the day as well. The clearer skies towards the southeast. A lot of the rain across Scotland will clear away as we go overnight, but there is some further rain set to come in from the west through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Outbreaks of rain mainly across western parts of Scotland, a bit further south as well. Fresher air in the north means temperatures here could drop to single figures in some prone spots, but further south it's another warm night to come. Temperatures holding up in mid to high teens Celsius. More showery rain across northern parts in particular through tomorrow. Some of this turning heavy, even thundery, especially across northern parts of Scotland through the day. Watch out for some higher rainfall totals building up here. Further south, apart from a few showers perhaps around some southern coastal parts, it is going to be dry but not as hot as it has been today. Temperatures peaking around 28 Celsius.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again
to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Oh, live from Washington, D.C., this is Bev on GB News with a story shaping Great Britain and America tonight.
Should the wealthy be ready to pay more tax on their assets and their properties?
I'm 4 days in. I mean, you're asking me now to write, the next budget or, the next manifesto.
Taxes, wealth and an exodus of Britain's richest. We're going to be debating why the number of UK millionaires might have fallen to its lowest level since the last financial crash. And can Andy Burnham do anything about it? Also, is the classroom stacked against boys? New research suggests they could be losing out on predicted grades and potentially university places. Plus,
should the wealthy be ready to pay more tax on their assets and their properties?
I'm 4 days in. I mean, you're asking me now to write, the next budget or, the next manifesto.
We've just done that one, but we'll do it again because it must be so worrying to everybody. Prime Minister Burnham refusing to rule out a wealth tax. It's been revealed the shocking number of millionaires who are fleeing our country. The same ones as there was first time round. Also this.
First of all, you're saying you take responsibility for it and it was a mistake, and yet you won't apologise because you're blaming Nigel Farage for amplifying it.
I think we also need to talk about a double standard.
No, you keep taking the conversation on.
Victoria Derbyshire there on the BBC, doing a decent job actually of holding Zach Polensky to account. Breaking news, he has been responding to that widespread criticism that he got after sharing a social media post on Instagram of this guy in his pride hat wearing a t-shirt with a guillotine on it saying it was waiting for Nigel Farage. We're going to be discussing that in just a moment. And could mosquitoes be the solution to mosquitoes? Yep, that's as crazy as it sounds, but you do not want to miss this story. I'm going to talk to the man who's bringing 600,000 of them here to Washington, D.C. I'm Bev Turner. This is The Late Show Live. Do you know that picture there? If you're listening on the radio, there's pictures of mosquitoes. It just makes me itch. Just looking at those pictures make me feel a little bit itchy. But you do want to stay tuned for that story. I'm in the studio this evening with Matthew Hurt, Eric Ham, and in London we've got Benjamin Butterworth and Paul Cox. Thank you all, gentlemen. Now moving on to that main story this evening, a story that's so good we played it to you twice. This is because the number of British millionaires has dropped to its lowest level in nearly 2 decades. The Adam Smith Institute estimated that there were 442,000 people in Britain with wealth of more than £1 million, the lowest level since the 2008 financial crash. And to make it even worse, Andy Burnham has hinted at what critics are calling a 10% death tax on all estates to fund his social care reforms, which he says are essential for the NHS. Let's go now to political commentator, friend of the show, Lib Dem Matthew Hulbert. Matthew, thank you for staying up till 2 o'clock in the morning to talk to me on The Late Show Live. Now, Matthew, do you like millionaires?
Always a delight to see you, Bev. Well, I've got to tell you here that I've got the world's smallest violin just here for these poor little babies, these poor little darlings, these mega rich individuals who might have to pay a wee bit more in tax to help fund something like social care. So they're throwing the toys out of their very well-worn pram and they're off on the jet abroad. Well, I say, see ya.
Do you think, Matthew, that you will ever be a millionaire?
No, and I'm not so sure that I'd want to be one. I think it's uncanny, Bev, that this report, I think on the front page of the Telegraph, has said that all these poor darlings are off on their private jets and leaving. And it comes at a time when, Andy Burnham might be, hopefully, I hope he is, about to introduce a wealth tax to help fund much needed change on social care, and B, when Gary Lineker and 120 other very rich individuals have said, patriotic millionaires, have said tax us more, we want to be taxed more to help fund vital public services. It's so uncanny that, I think it was on the front of the Telegraph, wasn't it, this story, that maybe the owners of that organisation, maybe the funders of this very channel might have to pay a little bit more tax if this was to happen. And suddenly we see this report, it's uncanny.
But don't you see that these millionaires who are paying a disproportionate amount of tax compared to the poor, and they should be paying a disproportionate amount of tax, I agree with that, they're the ones who are paying for the NHS, the potholes, the schools, the police, all the services that you and I use. We're not going to be able to fund them, Matthew, if all these millionaires aren't in the UK. So you can wave them goodbye with a sense of perhaps some sort of envy, if you don't mind me saying that. But we are the ones that will ultimately suffer when they're gone.
Look, I mean, I just can't believe that these poor darlings who, and good on them for being successful, I absolutely applaud their success. Well done on everything that they have achieved and this wonderful life that they now have as very, very rich individuals, and quite right that they should be paying more. But of course, it's those at the poorest end who, although they might be paying less in proportion, feel it that much more because obviously they're nowhere near as well off as these people. So I think these people should be like the patriotic millionaires. They should say, tax us a little bit more because we want to give back to the country that helped make us.
All right, let me bring my guests in on this. Matthew Hurt here, Eric Ham, and also Ben and Paul. There we go, a big fat 6 box. I love it. Right, who wants to get involved in this now? Paul, let me come to you in the UK. He's got his hand up. He's got his hand up. This is like, what was that game show where everyone used to sit in a box? Anyway,
Blankety blank.
Who wants to be a millionaire?
Right now. Brilliant. Well, exactly. But unfortunately, if we were giving away £1 million, Matthew would want to tax it, Paul.
Quite right.
He also weirdly wouldn't want it. Matthew's very happy where he is. Look, can I just say that this is where I sit on this. If every socialist government or any socialist government, their aspiration is always mediocrity for all. So that's why we're continually talking about this. And the reason I say that, Matthew, is you shake your head there, and I do respect you a lot, as you know, my friend, is because they always want to put a ceiling on success. Nobody's allowed to be too successful. But all socialism is paid for by capitalism. It is unfundable and unworkable without capitalism. And the best way to get your economy working is to encourage people to be entrepreneurial, not put a cap on them, let them grow to the point that they can grow to, perhaps anything we can imagine, like Elon Musk, and then let them give back to society. Don't make them fearful of society, and certainly don't make them fearful of government. We should be encouraging this, and it's no surprise that they're leaving in their droves. And you know what? Don't feel sympathy for them, Matthew. They don't need the sympathy. They will go and be successful. They will go and be successful elsewhere, and we won't benefit, but the communities they go to live in will benefit.
Well, Paul, can I ask you a really serious point? Can I ask Paul a really serious? Can I ask my friend Paul a really serious point? So, you know, Paul, you know what my dear late mum went through, having to wait 11 hours for an ambulance after a fall at home, and she died 2 days later. And it was ultimately because of the social care system, because ambulances were backed up outside a local hospital and couldn't deliver patients into the hospital because there were patients in hospital who couldn't come out because there wasn't care for them at home. So seriously, can I ask you then, how would you fund a much needed change to social care?
Well, the first thing I would do is look at our immigration issue, Matthew. And by the way, I don't want to carry on down this line and just have my political view without paying respects to your mum. I'm very sorry to hear that. I did read about that when you put it out there, and I'm very, very sorry to hear that. And that could happen to any one of us, irrespective of our political views, and irrespective of what's in our bank account, by the way. Emergency services provided by the NHS need to be accessible for us all. However, there are much wider societal issues that I would immediately tackle. We could reduce the welfare bill, put that in. There's £335 billion a year going into welfare. Take 20% of that out and give it to the NHS. £10 billion a year plus goes to net zero. Take that out, give that to the NHS. That's immediately, I've just found £40 billion a year that can go into the NHS that would help prevent, hopefully, that situation from ever happening again. And I don't think we need to tax millionaires or billionaires or whoever the latest bogeyman is in order to achieve those things.
The problem with socialism, Benjamin, is it ignores psychology and it ignores human behaviour and the fact that if you are a billionaire, a trillionaire, a gazillionaire, there's no such thing as enough. There's no such thing as enough money. And we might find it slightly nauseating to think that you would want to have hundreds of millions or a billion. I'm kind of like Matthew. I think there's certainly a ceiling in which I would be in, say, well, I've got enough, right? It might differ with Matthew. I'd quite like to consider myself to be a multimillionaire if I had the choice. But we've got to account for the fact that people who want to make vast sums of money will just leave, and there is nothing you can do about it unless you help them to incubate that wealth.
Well, money doesn't buy happiness, but it does buy nice wine, which is close enough for me. So, you know, I have no problem with the rich. I actually insist on only dating rich men because I love other people paying for everything that I get. So, a true socialist...
You're not going out with me, Benjamin.
Don't worry, there's no danger of that. So what I would say...
Oh, my goodness.
What I would say...
Wow. Oh, my goodness.
I think that, for example, a third of retirees are worth more than £1 million now, and that's because of the value of their homes in most cases. So do people like that moving to Spain have an effect on the economy? No, they might be wealthy, but they're probably not economically very useful. They just have an asset that inflated in value. And I'd also turn this in a different direction, which is to say that I know many younger people who are entrepreneurial, who are aspirational, who have left Britain. They're probably not millionaires, but they have a very good chance of going down that route. And the reason is because some of the basics about life in Britain, by which I mean the cost of a house in somewhere nice, is just out of reach with incomes. And so I think it's more complicated than to say the tax structure is causing problems like this. Actually, even if you earn a good income, you don't get the basics because the social contract has been breached. And so I think the greater risk is the younger generation coming through that are aspirational, who can't get on the housing ladder, who can't take risks with their money to start a family, to start a business, and that's what's going to pain us. And I'm afraid maybe a bit of restructuring the economy so that things like houses aren't so expensive, and one of the ways to do that could be inheritance tax, is a good idea.
No, I have so little time for the young talking about buying expensive wine and saying they'll never have a deposit for a house. My generation, we didn't drink expensive wine and therefore we saved for a deposit for a house. You can't have it both ways. By all means, enjoy your expensive wine, but just accept that you'll never have a deposit for a house, and that's your choice. Matthew, come in on that. What should we do with the rich, and what should we do with youngsters like Benjamin enjoying their wine and then whinging that the old people are taking all the money off them?
I do love when Matthew Holbert is on this program when I'm in the studio, but his flippant and condescending argument is lazy at best. And though he strives for mediocrity in his own life, what we don't understand and what many don't understand about economics is what is unseen, what is not seen in the economy when these millionaires flee a country. In the United States, we have the benefit of state-by-state tax structure, and we see it all the time. California, millionaires leaving in the droves, and what we see here is if millionaires leave Great Britain, there will be untold millions of dollars that is not spent in an economy that is for decades been stagnant because of called the law. And most people don't understand what is seen and what is unseen. And when you remove X number of millionaires or X number of people who create jobs, people who create opportunities, people who invest in business and industry out of an economy, you don't know what jobs aren't created. You don't know who can't afford a home because that economic activity is removed from a country, and that is what has happened across Europe for the better part of 75 years. And with all due respect to Matthew, and my condolences for the passing of your mother, but the situation with the health service in the United Kingdom is precisely because it is government run, and that is a very unpopular position to take on that side of the pond. But we don't have nearly the issues with hospitals and ambulances in the United States that you do waiting 6, 8, 11 months for
give me a break.
In Canada or Great Britain.
Give me a break. Give me a break. You're seriously
trying to break, Matthew, because you are still being flippant and condescending.
I think he's about to attack your health service. Go on, Matthew.
I'm never flippant and condescending. That's my good friend Paul. No, so what I would say is, look, I mean, don't try and, I mean, you have your health service where it depends on whether you can afford to pay, whether you get treated or not. I'll stick with our free at the point of use national health service, but I want a national health service that is properly funded, and we're still not up to the European average of spending on health services, and also it's increasingly privatised. So I think those are the two reasons why the NHS is not living up to what it should be living up to, my fellow Matthew.
Your national health service is not free. It is paid for by taxpayers in
it's free at the point of use
operation, and It's yes, but everyone who pays taxes in Great Britain pays for it, and so that cost is unseen for most of them. And what that means is people abuse the system, and there are long waits and unexpected tragedies, and it is unfortunate. But that is what we can come to expect.
I suppose you were against Obamacare, were you? You were against Obamacare, I assume, were you? Of course you were.
14 years since Obamacare, and in the 14 years since Obamacare has been the law of the land, no more people have found free or reduced health care costs than they did beforehand. We are still fighting that process argument today in the United States, and Democrats are still saying not enough people have health care. I thought Obamacare was going to solve that problem. It was promised to us, and it has not.
Eric, you know that's not true. You know that the program certainly did eliminate free riders, but you know also, too, it needed to be expanded. There were people who were looking for a public option. And now we have, and of course there was a subsidy. The administration has sought to actually remove that to make health care cheaper for millions of Americans. But this has always been a massive, massive political fight here in Washington, the issue of health care. And you certainly know that. And for people in the United States who have jobs, whose jobs provide health care, great. But what about the millions of people who don't? And of course, there was always the issue, particularly when it came to Obamacare, where you had young people who could stay on their parents' health care until they were 26. And then it also removed the idea of people who had pre-existing conditions who struggle to get health care or affordable health care. And that is exactly what the Affordable Care Act did for millions of Americans in this country. And so it was a boom. But again, it needed to go further. And unfortunately, it simply hasn't. And we know many Republicans are attempting to try to kill it as opposed to trying to expand it.
I don't want to go down the route of discussing comparative health cares, because I think that's a kind of a debate for another day. But I do think that there is an interesting conversation to be had about whether if we get to the point, Paul, where our tax receipts are going down so much because so many millionaires have left under Andy Byrne, and whether that will give rise to having to reboot the NHS and redesign it in some way so that it is more of a private healthcare system in some way. Because one thing I can tell you is that people may not mind paying more tax, as per Gary Lineker's point, but at the moment we're not getting anything for our tax spend, it feels. I do think British people are inherently, we're okay with paying tax. We're in this double bind situation at the moment where we're paying record tax, more than we've ever paid since the Second World War. But we've got appalling public services, hospitals, schools, roads, the security, like the fact that my daughters, when they say if they witness a crime, they wouldn't even cross their mind to ring 999 because they presume that a police officer will never come, whilst paying all this tax, Paul. So where's it going?
Well, this channel was set up on the basis of trying to understand essentially where all that's going. It really was. If you think about all of the core subjects that we have brought to public discourse that has been hidden by mainstream media previously, it has a lot to do with the fact that every single person in the country who is paying tax is contributing towards people who have done nothing to contribute towards the things that they are getting. And that's where the British sense of unfairness comes from. That's not right and left. That's British cultural politics, and I think we've lost our way a little bit there. We have to encourage. But think of the boom times since the war, the 80s, the 90s. I use the 80s and 90s because one was under Blair and one was under Thatcher. Now Blair owes his boom to Thatcher, and Thatcher's politics were very much sat within capitalism, and she managed to drag a country that Labour took into the doldrums in the late 1970s and bring it back to pretty mean health. And then after that, a bunch of things happened, and Tony Blair did enjoy it for a while. But the one thing that was consistent throughout all that time is we celebrated British culture and success. We were proud, even under Blair, we were proud of Britain. We were proud of the Union Jack. We were proud to contribute and give back. If we had millionaires and pop stars, even better. we exported that to the rest of the world. But what happened is we put that back into the system, and we didn't have immigration on the same level it is now. We have unprecedented immigration, and we simply can't afford to pay for it.
Sorry, can I just say, you know, Bev, you sit there and criticise Britain so much. You just said the schools are bad. We have some of the best schools in the world with better outcomes, for one, than the United States. The idea that our police has problems is true, but the idea that it's completely appalling is nonsense. Britain is not a failing country, and I'm afraid talking it down in the way you do is unacceptable.
Yeah, but look at... No, but look at how many burglaries are solved, how many stolen bikes get returned. People don't even bother reporting crime to the police anymore.
Bev, there isn't
and that's
a major...
I'm not talking it down because I'll be back there in the not too distant future. I want Great Britain to be great again. But when you look at the schools, look at the facilities, look at the lack of sports fields and swimming pools and blooming exercise books that are falling to bits and teachers that are paid not enough money.
Years of Tory
to do better. I agree. I agree with you.
First of all, we have better school outcomes than the US. There isn't a single major city in the US with a lower homicide rate than London. In fact, London has its lowest homicide rate on record at the moment. We don't have a $250,000 bill if you, God forbid, get cancer and have to go to hospital. These are fantastic things about Britain. And the idea that somehow we are failing and that we are unacceptable is a completely unfair way to talk about this country.
But don't you feel that sense of malaise? That sense of going out of the door and you're not sure whether your train is going to arrive or whether you're going to get attacked by someone on the bus or whether you're going to be sat in traffic for 3 hours because, like, what I'm saying is there's a sense in which, and I do think it stems from 2020, I don't think we've ever quite pulled our socks back up again, got our work ethic back, got enough people there to make the wheels keep turning on our country. We're feeling it. And now that we're seeing AI take more jobs as well, particularly in the, as I say, the laptop class, it's coming for everybody at the moment, Benjamin, and we don't seem to have much of a plan. I applaud some of the things Andy Burnham's doing. I really genuinely do, and I get criticised for it. But I don't mind saying that. I think there's a lot of what he's doing at the moment on paper looks very, very sensible. And I'm not trying to talk the country down. I'm just saying that we've got to be better.
I mean, you talk about public transport. You're a lot more likely to get attacked or mugged on the New York subway than you are on the London Underground. I've never seen a single thing like that in 16 years living in London. You talk about AI. Britain has double the investment in its tech sector of France and Germany combined. We are a world leader on that topic. You know, Britain has the second biggest economy in the world for consulting. It has the major world hub ahead of New York for financial services. We do remarkably well in so many ways, and one of the reasons we do well, you know, Paul talked about immigration. I went to the London School of Economics, the best university in Britain. It attracts 80% overseas students, and they are the brightest and highest earning people in Britain. These are what make Britain great, and I'm afraid you talk those down for the sake of a country that charges you $250,000 if you dare to get cancer.
I think you just said the London School of Economics has 80% overseas students. Correct me if I got that wrong.
Yeah, and they are exceptionally capable, the best in the world, and they come to a British university and it has the highest graduate income of any university.
My point.
And what is wrong with that?
Well,
where do they go, Matthew? When they got their education, where do they go? Well, they don't often stay here.
Where do they go?
When I talked about immigration,
stay in the UK.
I was talking about net contributors. I'm not talking, you know, brilliant. Let's have 80% of people at London School of Economics coming from abroad, have the very best of the world coming to London. But they must stay here. When I worked for Serco when I was an 18-year-old, they literally paid for my degree education on the basis that I continued to work for Serco so that they got the benefit of my education for a certain amount of years. Otherwise, I would have to pay that back. We're not doing that as a country. We're not respecting ourselves.
The millionaires can leave because they're millionaires, but people we've educated here must stay here. Explain that to me.
No, that's not what I'm saying, Matthew. I don't want the millionaires to leave, first of all. I'd much rather they stayed and we made more millionaires. And actually, if those London School of Economic pupils are brilliant, I'd much rather they stayed here and grew our economy too. The type of immigration I'm talking about, I'm even interested in contributing.
The fact that 80% of the students at the London at the LEA is going to from overseas. Tell me. Yeah, London School of Economics. Sorry, LSE. The fact that they are from overseas. That is exactly what is wrong with our country. Because you've got the best and the brightest. We've got the best and the brightest from overseas coming to LSE to study, and I can guarantee they'll go back to India, they'll go back to China, they'll come back to Washington DC. They will. What about those 80% of places that could have been filled with British kids whose parents have paid into the tax system all their life? Do you see? That is fundamentally where we disagree. That is where I think our country goes wrong. We're not investing in ourselves, we're not investing in our own, and we're just slipping down the global tables in almost every area. I will concede one thing though, Benjamin. You're right about the AI space. You are right about the fact that we are doing well in AI, and we are doing well with deregulating some of that. And in fact, I was learning only here in the studio last night about how well we're doing in the crypto space and how the regulation in the UK is ahead of America. That was news to me, and I'm happy to brag about the fact that we're ahead of it. But what we're talking about there is two radically disruptive systems of the future, which is going to benefit a very small number of people. And when we're improving AI, we're taking away the jobs of all those people who would consider themselves to be middle class, working class. What are they going to do as the jobs of the future? That's my worry, whilst we are leaning into some areas which are going to benefit a tiny number of people. We've got to move on, gentlemen. Matthew Hulbert, thank you for joining us. I think there was some common ground there. And you might be striving for mediocrity, as per Matthew's criticism, but not on this show, my friend. You're always welcome. This is no mediocre show. We're the best show in late night slot doing American politics from the UK. So thank you, Matthew, for your time. Right, moving on. Let me know what you think. GBNews.com/your say. Now, still ahead this evening, researchers have found a huge gender gap across predicted grades given in schools. It might hold the key to why young boys are being left behind in Britain. Let's have a quick sting. And talking of stings, I promise you we are going to get to the mosquito story. You've got to stay tuned for it. But now, teachers may be harming boys' chances of getting into top universities by predicting lower A-level grades than girls who go on to achieve the same results. Researchers from Cambridge and Bristol universities found a consistent gender gap across 10 subjects, with girls more likely to receive over-predicted grades. The study says that predicted grades remain a key factor in university admissions and could influence access to the most selective institutions. So let me consider now, do we need to be doing more for young boys in Britain? And what this story tells us is that teachers look at boys at A-level and they say, all right, he might be getting a D now. He's probably not going to work very hard. So let's say you're getting a D in December. By June, he might have raised himself up to a C, if that. But the girls, well, she's getting a C now, but I know she's studious and she's got colour-coded notes, and by the summer, she's going to have an A. So how do we fix that? I guess it's just the teachers are underestimating the boys' ability to pull it out of the bag at the last minute, which I have to say, Benjamin Butterworth, I think young men and boys do pretty well, actually, when they're up against the clock. I think they do often produce the results.
Do you know, at GCSE, I got, which for the Americans is what you do up to the age of 16, and A-levels to the age of 18. At GCSE, I got good but not great results. But when it got to A-level, and there's a lot more that you have to think for yourself, it's a lot tougher. I think the gap between GCSEs and A-level is an enormous leap, bigger even than the difference between A-levels and university. I absolutely thrived. It took me a little time, like the first of the 2 years, I wasn't a quick adapter. But once I'd learned to stand on my own 2 feet, I really jolted ahead. I think there's a fundamental problem with forecasting grades. I mean, I remember when I was, getting my forecasts, and they just often schools exaggerate what they think you'll get in the hope that then you'll get an offer that's slightly lower than what you're predicted, and you're sort of fiddling the scheme. So in this example, you're talking about boys getting a worse deal than girls, but one thing there's lots of evidence for is that private schools are more likely to give higher predicted grades than state schools, which tend to be more sceptical of the pupils, and when actually they come out with the same grades, it's created an unfair advantage. I'd be quite interested to know, because I don't know how you fix that, in the US system, do they have a forecast grade which effectively reveals whether you get a university place or not? What's the alternative?
Yeah, how does it work here? So when we talk about predicted grades, do you even know what we mean by that?
What I've learned about predictive grades in the last 45 seconds is absolutely blown my mind. And I think it speaks to the difference between young boys and young girls in the way they mature and develop.
Yeah.
There are reams and reams of science on the difference between boys and girls, on maturity levels, on ability to sit and focus. I mean, even in this studio, as a 39-year-old, I'm still fidgeting much more than Bev is, and so there is so much. But this predictive grading situation, I never had that. We don't have anything like that in the United States that I'm aware of.
So what happens basically when you're doing your A-levels, so that is the last 2 years of school, so 16 to 18, as Ben said, you will apply for universities and the teacher will look at your application form and they'll go, you know what, Matthew's all right, he fidgets a bit, I think he's going to get B, C, D, whatever it is. Now that would be in the sort of autumn winter of your final year, and then you sit the exams maybe 6 months later, there or thereabouts, 5 or 6 months later, and they say, oh, guess what, Matthew concentrated or cheated, and he ended up with 3 A's. And so then you might not have been offered a place at the university that you wanted because the teacher underestimated your ability to cram or focus or cheat. Eric, this is the issue, and I think maybe boys, and what this report is showing us, that boys are being disadvantaged by this, and in other ways, I think, by the education system. I think boys find it much harder to sit behind a desk for 8 hours a day.
This sounds like the most absurd thing I've ever heard. You're predicting what? You're predicting success of a 16-year-old boy?
What, 17 or 18?
17-year-old boy. Boys are rambunctious. Boys are active. Boys struggle at times to focus. I mean, their bodies are going through tremendous change. But again, that is not predictive. In fact, in the United States, that's something we don't do. It's not predictive of success. And oftentimes people do learn differently, and boys are certainly a part of that. And so I think this idea of this predictive nature in terms of students, it's probably why boys are even more turned off. If you're saying that basically this boy is going to be a failure, then he encapsulates that and probably just walks away. And
isn't it funny
wonder why you guys are struggling trying to get people to go to work?
Paul Cox, when you hear about some British tradition seen through the lens of American dream determinism, like I find it quite fascinating. You realise we do have quite a messed up system, and it is demoralising when your teacher might say, "Oh, you're only going to get 3 Ds."
Yeah, it's no wonder we have a class system, is it? If you think about it, I mean, we are predicting. We're saying this person is only likely to do X, Y, and Z, and therefore, by the way, it's not just the predicted outcomes. That then universities are entirely judging you by that. You might not even make any cut to get to a university of choice and do a subject of your dreams, purely based on some Wally who's predicted because of the way you behave for 20 minutes, you're unlikely to do X, Y, and Z. And boys do mature differently. Yeah. I've got a 17-year-old daughter. Her and I have exactly the same maturity age. We've reached it now. Sophie's here, and I had a sit-down conversation with her this week about boys. Not the conversation, she's already aware, she's 17. But we were just talking about relationships. And I suddenly realised in sharing my exhaustive experience with her that actually on a maturity level, her and I aren't that far apart. She really listened and she counter-argued and she shared her experience. I couldn't have done that at 17. If someone had asked me about relationships at 17, I'd have just said, yes, please.
Right, let me know what you evening at home. GBNews.com/yours say, what can we do to help boys at school? Right, still to come this evening on The Late Show Live.
Don't pay any attention whatsoever to what Donald Trump says.
Oh, remember Wes Streeting saying that last year, don't pay attention to what Donald Trump said. Well, now he's our defence secretary. He had a meeting set up with Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, as they call it here. Well, it's been cancelled. Why do you think that might be? We're going to be debating if he's going to be taken seriously here in America. A quick look at your weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, this is your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's a bit more rain to come across northern parts today, whilst further south the dry and hot weather continues with temperatures in the southeast higher than yesterday. Let's first though talk about the rain across northern areas. A band of rain, not especially heavy this morning, but could pep up into something but more persistent, running across Northern Ireland into central parts of Scotland. And there are a few outbreaks of rain across other northern areas too, and here it's quite cloudy. More sunshine there across central southern parts of England in particular, and in the southeast, like I said, markedly hotter than yesterday. Highs of around 35 Celsius. Could be the 7th day this year where somewhere in the UK exceeds 35. Into the evening, and it's generally dry across northern parts of Scotland. A few outbreaks of rain here and there, maybe even some glimmers of sunshine, but generally quite cloudy. Wetter across central and eastern areas. A band of rain, which could be a bit heavy at times, continues through the evening and the start of the night. Northern Ireland will see most of the rain having cleared through, so a drier end to the day here. And across the bulk of England and Wales, it's going to be a fine end to the day as well. The clearer skies towards the southeast. A lot of the rain across Scotland will clear away as we go overnight, but there is some further rain set to come in from the west through the early hours of tomorrow morning. Outbreaks of rain mainly across western parts of Scotland, a bit further south as well. Fresher air in the north means temperatures here could drop to single figures in some prone spots, but further south it's another warm night to come. Temperatures holding up in mid to high teens Celsius. More showery rain across northern parts in particular through tomorrow. Some of this turning heavy, even thundery, especially across northern parts of Scotland through the day. Watch out for some higher rainfall totals building up here. Further south, apart from a few showers perhaps around some southern coastal parts, it is going to be dry, but not as hot as it has been today. Temperatures peaking around 28 Celsius.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back. So, around 600,000 mosquitoes are being released across Washington, D.C. this summer as part of an effort to reduce the number that bite us. I've been dying to tell you about this. Now, male mosquitoes carry a naturally occurring bacteria that sterilises females after mating, and it prevents their eggs from hatching. And the pest control company behind the scheme says it's more environmentally friendly than using insecticides, pesticides. So let me talk to the man who is the owner of Be Safe Mosquito Control, Todd Montgomery. And Todd, can I first of all congratulate you for the best name for any company I've heard in a long time. That's BEE-safe. Todd, I've got reservations about this because it sounds like man playing God. It's a little bit Bill Gatesy. It makes me a bit nervous, this. Are you sure this isn't going to destroy the planet by messing up our mosquito population?
Well, thank you for having me on. And yes, we are very sure that we are not going to destroy the planet with these mosquitoes. These male mosquitoes, they're infected with the gut bacteria that is already out in the environment. It's just taken from a different mosquitoes that are already out in the environment biting people. It doesn't infect people. There's virtually no way of this going Ari. So, you know, we're pretty confident that this will not have any negative impacts, and we're very optimistic that we can have a lot of positive impacts here.
So we're watching somebody here on this film. I don't know if that's you. Is that you?
That would be me.
And okay, that's you, Todd. Excellent. And you're demonstrating, because people order these mosquitoes to be delivered to their houses. And does it literally come in a cardboard tube like this, and then you release them into your garden?
Yeah, so they come in the cardboard tubes, and it's actually not released by the homeowner. It's released by us. So that is actually a video of myself, and that's actually my employee's hand just there. That is us releasing them in customers' yards. So it's a complex logistical situation where we've got to get them out there pretty quickly.
I'm sure otherwise they die in a cardboard tube, presumably, which would defeat the object entirely. Now, is there a point at which you could have so many of these kind of mosquitoes out there? Are they called zap mosquitoes, by the way? Is that right?
That's correct. They're called zap males, and males, importantly, do not bite.
Okay, so is there a point at which you could have so many zap males that you wipe out the mosquito population entirely? And that would presumably be a problem for anything that eats mosquitoes.
Yeah, so if you could wipe them out entirely, that would be a fantastic result in the United States if we could wipe out this particular mosquito. This only affects one species. There are over 3,000 species in the world. This particular species is invasive in the United States. It's a non-native species. So removing it is actually going to benefit the ecosystem because it has come into somewhere that it's not actually from. It's created an imbalance. And that's why it's so common, is that there are not natural predators eating it.
And the ones that it's killing, the type of mosquito that you want to eradicate, are they very bitey? Are they the ones that cause really horrible itchy bites?
Yeah, so the tiger mosquitoes are very anthropophilic. They like to eat, or they like to bite people over other potential hosts. So yeah, this is definitely one that is very pestiferous, to use a fun word. And so we would like to get rid of this one. It is implicated in the spread of disease, particularly dengue. That is not super prevalent in the U.S. right now, which isn't to say that it couldn't be. It is spreading in Florida and Puerto Rico. But this is a species that you really don't want to see because it's very annoying. The other that you really don't want to see is Aedes aegypti, which is another one that this kind of technique can be used against.
Now, I could have done 3 hours on this with you tonight, Todd. I've got so many questions, but just let me ask you a couple more. Am I right in thinking some people are more likely to be bitten by others? So whenever I'm away with my other half and we're in a hot country, he's obsessed about closing the curtains, turning the light off, because he said, if we get a mosquito in here, I'm going to get bitten to death. And I'm like, oh, come on, it's just because you're a millennial. I don't get bitten at all. Like, you just have to be tougher. You can imagine how much he loves that. But is there a type of person that gets bitten and some people just, I never get bitten?
Yeah, well, I regret to take your husband's side on this one, but mosquitoes definitely do have preferences, and, you know, the best defense against mosquitoes is to marry somebody more attractive to them than you are, because then they're never going to bite you. So, yeah, they do have preferences. Number one is going to be your skin microbiome. Which is the bacteria that live on your skin, the composition of them. It's not like how often you shower. It's a sort of inherent thing, kind of like your blood type, which is another factor. Type O is going to be a preferred type for most mosquito species. And then the last factor is going to be your skin tone.
So if you have a very good, healthy, diverse microbiome, are you less likely to be bitten?
So it's not in such a way that you can change it or an indicator of health. It's more inherent, just like your hair color or your eye color would be. Your skin microbiome is not something that you can really seek to change. So,
okay,
you know, if you're appealing to them now, you're likely to remain.
Okay, so it's not like your gut microbiome where you can actually take supplements or change your diet or change your lifestyle in order to improve it. Okay, well, I have to tell my other half then there's absolutely nothing he can do about it. He's just going to have to suffer and I'll have to turn the lights off at night. And the other question I want to find out from you is this. How did you discover this? And when you did, how did you decide to make it into a business?
Yeah, so one of the things that we try to do is we try to stay on top of any emerging cutting-edge technology that is eco-friendly. That's our whole mission, is to get rid of mosquitoes in ways that don't harm pollinators and other beneficial insects. So I'm always reading the latest papers that are coming out. So this actually came out of the University of Kentucky, and we are just the first to work with those researchers to bring this to customers' yards.
And is it proving very popular then?
You know, my phone and my email have been really blown up today. So we're going to say it seems to be a pretty popular idea now that people have heard anything about it. For this season, we only advertised it pretty much internally to our existing customers. So it was sort of a limited release for this season, and we're hoping to really expand that next year.
Well, good. I wish you luck with it. And is it the kind of thing that you could send globally eventually, do you think? You're having to obviously do this in America, locally here at the moment, but is it the kind of thing that we might ever need in the UK, for instance?
Yeah, so I mean, there are other countries that are doing this. Singapore probably is doing this the most of anybody. They're seeking to cover their entire country using this method. The UK does not have Aedes albopictus, the tiger mosquito, or Aedes aegypti, the yellow fever mosquito. Currently, there have been some, introductions that were cut off. So for the UK, what I would really advise is prevent either of those mosquitoes from ever coming in, because if you can avoid ever having to deal with either of those two species, it will be a lot better than bringing them in. They're much more annoying probably than what you have currently.
Yeah, Todd, fantastic. Thank you so much. How fascinating. Todd Montgomery there, owner of Be Safe Mosquito Control. Thank you, Todd. Let me talk to my panel about this. Benjamin Butterworth, just for your sake, I'm going to say, isn't the UK brilliant because we don't have such bitey mosquitoes? That is one very, very good thing about Great Britain. I'll give you that, indeed. But what an amazing story that these mosquitoes mate with the females and render them sterile. I mean, it's very something out of sci-fi, Paul.
Yes, it is. It is. I've got lots of jokes coming to mind. They all seem very inappropriate. But look, it is fascinating. I'm glad we haven't got.
It's nearly 3 o'clock in the morning. You go for it, my friend. You let rip.
Never let me go for it. I just don't know where I'll stop, Bev. I really don't. But it's one thing I would say is it's interesting to hear all the. I've heard people talking about, the mosquitoes love me. I'm always getting bitten, and I'm not sure I'm one of those people. I do get bitten, but I'm never often complaining about it in the same way some people I know can think of do. But it was interesting to hear that actually there might be some truth behind that. And when he said tone of skin, I wanted to
elaborate
on that, not because I wanted him to say he just eats white people, and I could go, yeah, of course they do. They're blooming racist or whatever. I just wanted to know which. Sorry,
I'd let you down there.
Yeah, no, you didn't. No, that sounds terrible. You did not let me know. Let me down. But I would have been very interested to understand the answer to that. But yeah, I'm just glad we don't have those two types. I'm really glad we don't.
Yeah, Eric, do you get bitten?
Oh, I have whelps right now all over my legs. I mean, this has been just a massive, massive problem in Washington, D.C. And, the question is, why didn't you release these 600,000 mosquitoes months ago? I think it's something.
Well, it's a business. He's not going to give them away for free, is he, Eric? You've got to go and buy your mosquitoes. Are you going to buy some for your garden?
Hey, I'll buy as many as he's selling. D.C. has always been considered the swamp, not just because of our politics, but because of the humid weather and the mosquitoes. mosquitoes that we see always flocking around. So this is a welcome idea, and I think people will look forward to this. In fact, in the United States, here in Washington, D.C., you see a lot of people who hire private companies to come out every spring, every summer to spray their gardens, to spray their backyard, to actually try to keep the mosquitoes down. In my backyard, I have like these citronella candles that are up, and it almost looks like a forest fire back there, just to try to keep the mosquitoes out. So us Washingtonians, we do so much to try to tamp down on this, and I can't tell you how much of a problem this is, which is why we were so all eagerly anticipating this conversation.
Have I introduced you to something new about Washington that you didn't know tonight, Matthew, about the fact that you can hire these killer mozzies?
I am relatively unbothered by mosquitoes. However, the science behind this is really fascinating, and one of the issues that was very important in Washington, D.C. a number of years ago was the serious rat problem that happens in the city, and the city banned the ability for exterminators to kill the rats because it wasn't polite. So a lot of companies would trap the rats and then release them across the river in Virginia.
Was that under Biden?
That it was even, I think, before the pandemic. But this is some really fascinating science, and I'm really interested to see where this goes. And congrats to Todd and his business for working with the University of Kentucky on this.
Yeah. Now, if he could do something to actually get the rat population under control here in D.C., I mean, the guy should get a medal, both from local government as well as from the president.
Yeah, but Benjamin, are you remotely troubled by this tinkering around with nature in this way? Because I very much worry. I mentioned Bill Gates. You know, there are so many stories about what Bill Gates might be doing in order to produce different types of food or meat that is made in a lab. You know, I mean, I do worry sometimes about these kind of ambitious visions of people who, when actually most of the time nature gets it right.
Well, I don't want to aid your theories or fears, but apparently Alphabet, the parent company of Google, wants to release 32 million of these mosquitoes into California and Florida. So that is a little bit Bill Gates-esque. You wonder why a massive company wants to do that, but maybe it's in the public good. And as the expert explained, these mosquitoes are not necessary to other life forms, so what is the benefit? It does slightly remind me, you talked about rats. The Canadian province of Alberta has no rats. You look at a map of the Americas and there is huge populations of rats all over the place, everywhere but Alberta, because they managed to enforce a very strict policy to exterminate the rats since the 1950s, and now it's a serious offence, it's a criminal offence, if you don't report a rat sighting in Alberta. So there is somewhere that's...
No, shush.
There are no
you
rats
could
in
get
Alberta.
a knock on the door if you saw you saw a rat and you didn't ring the police.
Yeah, because they've spent 70 years getting rid of the things. They don't want to let them in now. So it shows you that, you know, you can eradicate these kind of pests.
Wow.
I don't want to talk down Britain at the last minute, Ben, but we've got a whole generation that don't ring the police if they see a burglary. And you've got Alberta, where you get in trouble if you don't ring the police if you see a rat. And you want evidence of how far we've fallen in the UK. And can we just have a minute to appreciate the word of the night from Todd there, which was anthropophilic.
Lovely.
He said some mosquitoes are more anthropophilic, or some people are more, meaning a lover of human beings. And I think we can agree that we are all anthropophiles, are we not, here? That's what unites us on this panel, that we love humanity, that we love human beings, we love Great Britain, just so that Benjamin Button can sleep well. And I've still got 30 seconds. I can't carry on this for 30 seconds.
My favourite word, Bev, was bitey, which is something I was previously unfamiliar with as well. So a little bitey here in the... I'm wondering if that happens in the studio over in Paddington, London.
We get a little bitey.
Things get a little bitey.
I also think Eric nearly had the word of the night as well, because he said rambunctious earlier, which is a word I've never heard outside of the UK. It's very rambunctious. It sounds like the sort of thing an upper-class Englishman would say. So very well done, Eric. Thank you for keeping rambunctious going.
Were you channeling your upper-class Englishman, Eric?
No, I was channeling my inner 16-year-old boy.
Well, listen, it's going to be a very good show tomorrow night. As I say, I'm going to be at that Fauci hearing in the morning. I'll bring you all the details tomorrow night. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thanks so much. Sleep well, everybody. Night-night.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, this is your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. There's a bit more rain to come across northern parts today, whilst further south the dry and hot weather continues with temperatures in the southeast higher than